Chapter 222. Chu Wuwei's words were very clear. He also knew that Qin Hao naturally understood what he was saying. If the anger of the Nine Mystical Palace landed on the royal clan and the Emperor Star Academy, it would undoubtedly weaken the strength of both parties. At the same time, it would also cause the royal clan and the Emperor Star Academy to walk down a path of irreconcilable enmity. General Qin, let's leave the royal capital. I don't wish for our grudges to continue. Let the past be swept away by the wind. Chu Wuwei calmly stated. Qin Hao stared at his clean countenance as a cold glint of light flickered in his eyes. General Qin Wentian isn't a fool. There are many things that he has already seen through. It's just that he doesn't wish to say anything. If you insist on being stubborn, I'm afraid that the relationship between him and the Qin clan will no longer be able to be maintained. If you kill me here, it would be equivalent to admitting that the person who dealt the fatal blow to Qin Wentian back then was one of your men. Chu Wuwei's gaze abruptly turned sharp as he stared at Qin Hao. That day, before the royal clan and the Emperor Star Academy completely fell out, Qin Wentian had suffered an assassination attempt. That assassination attempt caused the relationship between the royal clan and the Emperor Star Academy to plunge to the freezing point. And this was in addition to the fact that Qin Wentian didn't die. If Qin Wentian had died back then, the royal clan and the Emperor Star Academy would have directly engaged in a decisive battle. Qin Hao similarly stared at Chu Wuwei, his countenance ice-cold. After a long moment of silence, he laughed. Good. I've never treated Chu Tianjiao as my opponent, but who would have thought that I would be defeated by the Crown Prince? Chu Wuwei, you have won. After speaking, Qin Hao lifted his feet and departed. Qin Wentian stared at his silhouette as he followed after him. Everything would eventually come to an end. Let's move out. We will return to the outskirts of the royal capital. Qin Hao returned to his original location as he commanded in a loud voice. The soldiers all froze as they inclined their heads and stared at Qin Wentian in the air. After which, they all sighed as they departed. Had Qin Wentian made his own decision? Wentian. Qin Chuan didn't leave, he was staring at the silhouette in the air. Qin Wentian took a step forward and landed beside Qin Chuan. He smiled and said, Father, your son is unfilial. Silly child. Qin Chuan rubbed Qin Wentian's head. In the eyes of this iron-blooded man, Qin Wentian would forever be a child. No matter how brilliant he was still Qin Chuan's son, his pride. In the future, your father will not be able to help you. You must walk on your own path. Forget about the past. Qin Chuan said meaningfully. Don't worry, father. When I have time, I will return to Sky Harmony City to visit you. Qin Wentian held his father's hand tightly. No matter how Qin Hao was, his father, Qin Chuan, was still a man of steel. Little guy, you've grown up. Qin He and Qin Yi also walked to Qin Wentian's side and grinned. Qin Wentian glanced at Qin He's severed arm, feeling an unbearable feeling in his heart. This was the price he had to pay for seizing power. Wasn't Qin Hao ashamed of his actions? Drawing in a deep breath, Qin Wentian walked up and gave Qin He and Qin Yi a tight hug. Second uncle, third uncle, take care of yourselves in the future. Don't worry. Qin He smiled, as though he didn't remember his severed arm. In the future, when you're out adventuring, be more low profile and be cautious. Qin He instructed. Stinking brat, when you're successful in the future, don't forget your third uncle. Qin Yi casually patted Qin Wentian's shoulder. Back then, they had witnessed Qin Wentian awakening his talent. Now that Qin Wentian had reached this step, they felt gratified. Qin Wentian was their family, their kin. Even if he didn't give the emperor's authority to the Qin clan, it wouldn't affect their feelings towards Qin Wentian. The men of the Qin clan all had bones of steel. Qin Wentian heavily nodded his head. All right, this last probably has something to say to you. Qin He and Qin Yi stepped aside. After which, Qin Wentian saw a beautiful silhouette. It was none other than Qin Yao, whom he had asked the students of the Emperor Star Academy to send away. Sister, you look so beautiful even after wearing armor. Qin Wentian smiled as he looked at Qin Yao. Qin Yao was clad in armor, exuding a sense of heroism. Smooth talker. Qin Yao rolled her eyes at Qin Wentian. What are your plans for the future? I'll see. I might leave Chu soon to roam the world. Qin Wentian replied. Based on your talent, you should leave. Chu is too small for you. Qin Yao nodded her head. However, wouldn't it be hard to see you in the future? Thinking of this, a hint of disappointment could be seen in Qin Yao's beautiful eyes. The two of them grew up together, and their relationship was extremely deep. How can that be? How could I not come back to see sister? Qin Wentian laughed, as though he was trying to hide the pain of parting. Qin Yao naturally understood Qin Wentian's thoughts. She silently walked forward, gazing at the handsome youth who had grown up. After which, Qin Yao tiptoed as she placed a light kiss on Qin Wentian's forehead. After which, Qin Yao turned and ran away. She turned her head back and smiled sweetly at Qin Wentian. Smelly brat, remember to come back to see sister in the future. Looking at the departing back of Qin Yao, Qin Wentian heavily nodded his head. The members of the Qin clan gradually left. Qin Hao didn't even bid farewell to Qin Wentian. Maybe he was blaming Qin Wentian. Or maybe he was feeling guilty for what he had done. Qin Wentian didn't want to guess the reason. He only knew that Qin Chuan, Qin He, Qin Yi, and his sister Qin Yao were his family. In order not to affect this familial love, he would rather let some things go with the wind. Just like what Chu Wuwei had said to Qin Hao, Qin Wentian wasn't an idiot. He could already guess some of the things that had happened. However, it was better to let it go. With the departure of those from the Qin clan, and the death of Chu Tianjiao, Qin Wentian believed that with Chu Wuwei's capabilities, he would be able to easily control the situation. After all, no one was more familiar with the various powers in the royal capital than Chu Wuwei. Chu Wuwei walked to the side of Qin Wentian as he smiled. Leave the rest to me. After everything is settled, I will treat you to a drink. Okay. Qin Wentian lightly nodded his head, as he turned and departed. Those from the Ouyang aristocrat clan and Green Cloud Pavilion also left together with Qin Wentian. As for that supreme beauty Qing, she had long since disappeared. Just like that, the commotion that had rocked the entire Chu country came to an end. Qin Wentian left as far as he could, as though everything had nothing to do with him. However, among the various rumors circulating in the royal capital, Qin Wentian undoubtedly became one of the main characters. Not even 2 years had passed since he stepped into the royal capital, and he had already obtained the position of champion in the Junlin banquet. And now he had even changed the history of Chu. Currently, there wasn't a single person in the royal capital who didn't know of Qin Wentian's name. It was rumored that he had killed Luo Qianxiu, who was at the 2nd level of Yuanfu, in a domineering manner in the span of 10 breaths. It was also rumored that he had used absolute strength to kill Chu Tianjiao. There was also a rumor that the person who could ultimately decide who would inherit the throne was none other than Qin Wentian. He didn't choose to hand over the throne to the Qin clan, but chose to hand it over to Chu Wuwei instead. Naturally, with regards to the various rumors, there would always be traces of exaggeration. The number of people who knew the truth would always be the minority, but there was one thing that was undeniable. Qin Wentian was the mastermind behind this battle for the throne. A cold wind blew past the royal capital. After Chu Wuwei reorganized the situation in the royal capital, he issued an order. Back then, because of the mistakes of the previous emperor, the Wu king was wronged, and the Qin clan had no choice but to rebel. Now that the Qin clan knew that they had lost their way, they would let bygones be bygones. Qin Wu was bestowed the position of the martial king, a position that could be passed down from generation to generation. Sky Harmony City was also conferred to the other 10 cities. At the same time, the royal clan helped to rebuild the Emperor Star Academy, acknowledging its position as the #1 academy in Chu. Not only that, Chu Wuwei personally took on the role of an elder of the Emperor Star Academy, and would personally head to the Emperor Star Academy to guide students when he had time. This caused many to speculate. Wasn't Chu Wuwei unable to cultivate? How could he guide students? After this news was circulated, the martial king Qin Hao's immeasurably deep eyes glanced at the ancient imperial city. After that, he brought his people and left. His eyes were filled with complex emotions. It was time, it was fate. If he had known that Qin Wentian would end up like this today, he wouldn't have planned so many things as he did back then. Sadly, everything was over. Chu Wuwei wasn't Chu Tianjiao. He wouldn't give him any more chances. In fact, he wouldn't even have an excuse to send troops out again. In this gamble, he deeply felt how powerful that young man's methods were. It was as though everything was in the palm of his hand. Qin Wu had missed this opportunity. If he missed it, it would be the same for the rest of his life. Qin Wu was like this, so was the Bai clan. At this moment, Bai Qingsong and Autumn Snow were standing outside a manor, their countenances calm as they stared at the ancient manor in front of them. The once illustrious Yi clan was now desolate and desolate, filled with a sense of desolation and desolation. The Yi clan is finished. After Bai Qingsong's cultivation base was crippled, he had aged many times compared to before. His hair had already turned white, and as he stared at the Yi clan in front of him, he felt an indescribable feeling in his heart. Autumn Snow nodded her head lightly. The Yi clan was finished. In this gamble, the Yi clan and the O clan were Chu Tianjiao's diehard supporters. Both of them had suffered heavy casualties during the battle, and after the dust had settled, Chu Wuwei reorganized the Yi clan. The Yi clan was the first to be purged. There was no other reason. It was because Chu Wuwei had to give Qin Wentian an explanation. This would determine the ending of the Yi clan, a complete loss. The affairs of the world are unpredictable. Too fast, too fast. Bai Qingsong sighed deeply. This was a sigh that came from the depths of his heart. The Yi clan's performance had reached the pinnacle. Who would have thought that the once glorious Yi clan would fall so quickly? Who would have thought that the Qin clan that seemed to be on the brink of destruction would suddenly become a major power that could engulf the entire Chu country? Who would have thought that the trash from a year ago would actually control the fate of the Chu country, controlling the authority of the Chu country? If Bai Qingsong could have thought of this, he wouldn't have made such a decision back then even if he had to die. The passing of time is like a dream, just like a dream. Bai Qingsong turned and departed. His back was slightly hunched, as he exuded an air of old age. The nobility of a general was already like this, let alone ordinary commoners. Autumn Snow gazed at the vicissitudes of her father, as traces of tears appeared in her eyes. Chapter 223. Very quickly, Chu Wuwei settled the matter in the royal capital, and started to rebuild the Emperor Star Academy. This incident allowed everyone to witness the glory of the former crown prince. Although Qin Wentian was the main character in this battle, Chu Wuwei, who was the weakest among the various powers, had ascended to the throne in the end. From this, one could very well imagine how powerful he was. Many people couldn't help but to seriously look at this former crown prince. In the Emperor Star Academy, Qin Wentian gazed at the towering buildings that were erected one after another. Outside the academy, the recruitment process had begun, as well as the return of the students who had left the academy. I thought that I would never see this day again. Who would have thought that it would come so quickly? Ren Qianqing stood beside Qin Wentian. A smile could be seen in his eyes. He was too happy to witness the revival of the Emperor Star Academy. The Emperor Star Academy will be the same as before, the #1 academy in Chu. Qin Wentian laughed. Looking at the faces of the students, it was as though he was looking at his past self. I've never doubted Chu Wuwei. He is different from Chu Tianjiao. Maybe in his hands, Chu will have a better future. Ren Qianqing mumbled. Sadly, foster father won't be able to see this. How hateful. I don't even know if foster father is still alive or dead. I, Ren Qianqing, am too useless. The foster father he was referring to was none other than the headmaster of the Emperor Star Academy, Dai. Nothing will happen to the headmaster. There will be a day when I step into the 9 mystical palace. Qin Wentian's eyes gleamed with sharpness. This time around, if it wasn't for the Ouyang aristocrat clan and Green Cloud Pavilion, they wouldn't have been able to suppress the 9 mystical palace. I believe in you. Ren Qianqing smiled as he looked at Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian's talent caused him to have an intense confidence in Qin Wentian. Previously he had misjudged Luo Tianya, but this time around he wasn't wrong. Wentian. A voice drifted over from behind. Mustang, Luo Huan and Fan Le walked over. Teacher, Sister Luo Huan. Qin Wentian smiled. What are your plans for the future? Mustang asked as he looked at Qin Wentian. Let's go out and take a look. Since the matters in Chu were settled, It was time for him to walk his own path and grow. Do you want to bring your sister Luo Huan along? Luo Huan giggled, as though she had regained her usual radiance. That's great. I can't ask for more than anything to have such a beautiful woman like senior sister with me. Qin Wentian said with a smile. You're getting better at talking. Luo Huan glared at Qin Wentian. I won't drag you down. Also, I don't intend to leave now. Let's wait for a period of time. Sure. Fatty, what are your plans? Qin Wentian stared at Fan Lu as he asked. Me? Fan Lu narrowed his eyes, as he pulled a long face and replied in a depressed tone. Initially, I wanted to roam the world together with you, but the difference in talent is too great. Forget it, I think it's better for me to follow Sister Luo Huan. Qin Wentian stared at the serious expression on Fatty Fan Li's face, as he cast a glance of disdain at him. Damn it, he even found a good reason to follow a beautiful woman. I didn't say I would bring you along. Luo Huan giggled, causing Fan Li's face to sink. Forget it then, I can only bear with it and follow him. Fan Li glanced at Qin Wentian, as he spoke in a depressed tone, causing Qin Wentian to laugh, silently cursing Fatty in his heart. Actually, Fatty's talent wasn't bad at all. After Mustang and Luo Huan were captured, Qin Wentian had rescued them, and found out that Fatty had already broken through to Yuanfu. Luo Huan teased Fatty, asking him if he broke through due to some kind of stimulation. Fatty honestly replied, saying that even in his dreams, he wanted to save his sister Luo Huan, which was why he accidentally broke through to Yuanfu. Fan Lu was the first friend that Qin Wentian had made after he entered the royal capital. They had a friendship of life and death. Naturally, he hoped that Fatty would be able to roam the world with him. Other than being a little shameless, Fatty didn't have any other flaws. Are you interested in joining the Green Cloud Pavilion for cultivation? At this moment, a silhouette walked over. She had a slender figure, and was beautiful and dignified. It was none other than Qian Mingyu. Qian Mingyu smiled as she looked at Qin Wentian, extending an invitation to him. Qin Wentian was extremely grateful to Qian Mingyu for the matter this time around. He had long since forgotten about the unhappiness between them. However, he still hadn't decided which transcendent power to join. Naturally, it was impossible for him to agree to Qian Mingyu's invitation. I still wish to roam the world by myself, and see the outside world. In the future, I will decide which transcendent power to join. Qin Wentian smiled. Good. When you want to join a big force, you must remember to take my clear cloud pavilion into consideration. This is what I promised. Qian Mingyu no longer exuded the aura of nobility. She had already treated Qin Wentian as someone on the same level as her. In fact, she even faintly admired Qin Wentian. Definitely. Qin Wentian smiled as he nodded his head. Since this is the case, I shall take my leave first. We shall meet again in the future if there's an opportunity. Qian Mingyu gently smiled. It was about time for her to depart. There will be an opportunity in the future. At that time, don't forget to acknowledge me, the vagabond Wuxia. Qin Wentian jokingly replied. Qian Mingyu departed just like that. Staring at her departing back, Fan Lu mumbled, "Why don't I have such good luck with the ladies?" After which, Fatty dejectedly departed, as though he had suffered a blow. His actions caused Qin Wentian to be speechless. Not long after the people from the Green Cloud Pavilion left, Ouyang Guangxing also bade farewell and departed. After all, the reason he came to Chu was to visit Qin Wentian. Now that the matters in the dark forest were almost settled, it was about time for him to return. However, he believed that there would definitely be a day when he would meet Qin Wentian again. In the Mo clan, Mo Qingqing had always been paying attention to the news in the royal capital. After knowing that the dust had settled, Mo Qingqing's heart finally calmed down. She was extremely happy in her heart, happy for Qin Wentian. She had heard that he had easily defeated Luo Qianqiu, who was at the second level of Yuanfu, and even suppressed Chu Tianjiao. Such an impressive battle record caused Mo Qingqing to be filled with anticipation for Qin Wentian's future. However, although Mo Qingqing was paying attention to the news in the royal capital, Old Man Mo was more concerned about when Qin Wentian would set off. As for the matters in Chu, Old Man Qin had never been too interested in them. After all, he had seen too many wonderful things in the outside world. Naturally, he couldn't care less about the so-called waves of wind and waves in Chu. He only knew that Qin Wentian was the victor, but so what? Although Qin Wentian was only at the first level of Yuanfu, he still had to borrow the strength of others. How big of a wave could he stir up by himself? Not only that, this thought only appeared in Old Man Mo's heart once, and he didn't think too much about it. Old Man Mo, who was sitting in the pavilion, frowned, feeling somewhat depressed. Earlier, Bai Fei had impolitely told him that if Mo Qingqing continued to delay and refused to leave, she would report this matter to her master. Old man, there's no need to worry. Since Qingqing wants to wait for Qin Wentian to leave, let's wait a few more days. Hua Xiaoyan, who was sitting opposite of Old Man Mo, laughed. This last is too outrageous. Old Man Mo was even more enraged when he heard Hua Xiaoyan's words. I really don't know what's wrong with her. After all, Qingqing is still young, and she hasn't interacted with many people yet. When she heads to Grand Xia in the future, her way of thinking will slowly change. Hua Xiaoyan persuaded. Maybe. Old Man Mo sighed. Xiaoman, you should spend more time with Qingqing. Although this lass has a stubborn personality, her heart is still very good. You don't have to take what happened back then to heart. How can I be calculative with Qingqing over such a small matter? Hua Xiaoyan laughed as he shook his head. Old man, why don't I go and persuade Qingqing? Old Man Mo fell silent for a moment. He knew that Hua Xiaoyan was pursuing Mo Qingqing, and he also hoped that the two of them would be able to get along. However, Mo Qingqing seemed to have a grudge against Hua Xiaoyan. Okay, have a good chat with her. Old Man Mo nodded his head. I'll be leaving first then. Hua Xiaoyan bid his farewell, as he turned and headed towards the courtyard where Mo Qingqing was staying. A cold light flickered in his eyes as he stared at Qin Wentian. He had received news from his elder brother that the matter on the other side was about to be settled. This meant that Luo he would soon bring those from the Pill Emperor Hall away, and Mo Qingqing would be leaving as well. This was the best opportunity for him to capture Mo Qingqing. However, Mo Qingqing wasn't friendly towards him at all. Every time he met her, she would always treat him coldly. She had even berated him before, causing him to harbor a grudge in his heart. Without him, would Mo Qingqing be where she was today? And now, she actually dared to act all high and mighty in front of him? How laughable. Mo Qingqing's courtyard was quiet and tranquil. Upon seeing Hua Xiaoyan directly entering, she couldn't help but ask in a cold tone, "What are you doing here?" Upon seeing Mo Qingqing's cold attitude, Hua Xiaoyan's heart grew colder despite the smile on his face. Miss Mo, no matter what, I recommended you to enter the Pill Emperor Hall, and I'm also a guest of your Mo residence. Even if you don't like me, there's no need for you to treat me this way. Hua Xiaoyan slowly walked forwards. Mo Qingqing furrowed her brows, but she didn't dare to go overboard. Hua Xiaoyan walked closer to her, and abruptly, his silhouette flickered as he flicked his hands, causing a stream of gray energy to flow into Mo Qingqing's body. Mo Qingqing's countenance instantly turned frosty as she shouted, "What are you doing?" As the sound of her voice faded, Mo Qingqing's countenance changed. That gray energy actually circulated within her body, swiftly numbing her body. In fact, she felt as though her entire body was devoid of energy, and she felt as though she was about to collapse. Her countenance paled as she stared at Hua Xiaoyan. What are you trying to do? Mo Qingqing discovered that her voice was extremely weak, almost inaudible. Her countenance turned even paler. Hua Xiaoyan's countenance was filled with an evil light as he stared at Mo Qingqing. You are so beautiful. What do you think I'm trying to do? You dare? Mo Qingqing's voice was as soft as ever, as she struggled to move backwards. I don't dare? Why wouldn't I dare? What status do I, Hua Xiaoyan, have? If I touch you, even if it's for the sake of your reputation, the Mo clan wouldn't object, right? And even if they object, what can they do to me? As for the Pill Emperor Hall, even if they are angered, they wouldn't kill me. What loss would I have? On the contrary, I've already obtained the body of a supreme beauty. Hua Xiaoyan continued, since you want to pretend to be virtuous and virtuous, I want to see how you will continue to act. Maybe after I'm done with you, you will change your mind and follow this young master with all your heart. Hua Xiaoyan's countenance contorted with malevolence, as his disguise as a spoiled brat was completely revealed. How beautiful, causing my heart to flutter. Tsk. Hua Xiaoyan walked forwards, his eyes filled with greed as he stared at Mo Qingqing's alluring figure. Mo Qingqing's countenance contorted as she pulled out a dagger from her robes, her eyes filled with incomparable rage as she glared at Hua Xiaoyan. You want to kill me? Do you still have the strength? Hua Xiaoyan asked in a low voice. Father, Mother Wintian, I'm sorry. A teardrop flowed down from Mo Qingqing's beautiful eyes. After which, she pierced the divine weapon dagger into her heart. Although she didn't have much strength left in her, the divine weapon dagger was extremely sharp. Fresh blood dyed her robes red, and the tears in her eyes caused the hearts of those who saw it to ache. She didn't expect Hua Xiaoyan to be so despicable. In that case, she could only use her life to protect her purity. Are you crazy? Hua Xiaoyan's countenance turned incomparably ugly to behold. Staring at the resolute expression on Mo Qingqing's face, he suddenly felt fear in his heart. Mo Qingqing was committing suicide, refusing to let him touch her even in death. This crazy woman. Chapter 224. Hua Xiaoyan panicked when he saw the incessant flow of blood from Mo Qingqing's heart. This ending was far more tragic than what he had imagined. Not only would he not be able to obtain Mo Qingqing's body, he would even become the murderer of Mo Qingqing. If that was the case, the Mo clan wouldn't dare to do anything to him, but those from the Pill Emperor Hall would definitely bear a grudge against him. Especially that woman Luohe. If she knew that he had forced the death of her beloved disciple, she would definitely do anything in a fit of anger. Don't stab me anymore. I'll let go, I'll let go. Hua Xiaoyan shouted in a loud voice. Mo Qingqing's body had already softly slumped to the ground. Originally, she had no strength left in her body. How could she endure such agony? However, her beautiful eyes were still wide open, hoping that the bastard wouldn't touch her. What's going on? Several people rushed over upon hearing the commotion, and upon seeing Mo Qingqing lying in a pool of her own blood, their countenances instantly turned as pale as paper. Something happened to Miss, a voice exclaimed, akin to a thunderbolt from the clear skies, resounding throughout the entire Mo clan. In the blink of an eye, more and more people arrived. When Mo Tianlin arrived, he saw his beloved daughter lying in a pool of blood, and his face paled. Qingqing. Mo Tianlin's body trembled as he held Mo Qingqing's body in his arms. Upon seeing her father's arrival, a smile appeared on Mo Qingqing's face. Her lips trembled, as though she wanted to say something, yet no words came out. Who did this? Mo Tianlin's eyes flickered with a terrifying coldness as he stared at Hua Xiaoyan. What's going on? Bai Fei and the rest also rushed over, and upon witnessing this scene, their countenances all changed. It wasn't me, I was only joking with her, but she actually treated it so seriously. Hua Xiaoyan tried to explain himself. There was no way he would admit that he had ulterior motives towards Mo Qingqing. Bai Fei coldly glanced at him, before walking over to Mo Qingqing's side. Instantly, she retrieved a bottle of medicinal pills and fed them to Mo Qingqing. One of her hands was placed on Mo Qingqing's chest, while the other was placed on her wrist. Hua Xiaoyan, you bastard. It was as though Bai Fei knew what Hua Xiaoyan had done to Mo Qingqing. She glared at him in rage. Are you kidding me? Do you even need to use the energy disintegration powder to deal with her? You bastard. Although Bai Fei didn't have a favorable impression of Mo Qingqing, she was still a woman. How could she not be enraged that Hua Xiaoyan would use such a despicable method to deal with Mo Qingqing? How dare you? Hua Xiaoyan's countenance was filled with malevolence. However, after being exposed by Bai Fei, he calmed down a little. Do you know who you're talking to? Spoiled brat, who do you think you are? If it weren't for your elder brother, do you think you would have the qualifications to talk to me? Bai Fei was also angered. As the disciple of Dan King's daughter, Luohe, she was also very proud. How could this spoiled brat be so arrogant? Hua Xiaoyan's countenance alternated between shades of green and white, growing more and more malevolent by the moment. He glared at Bai Fei as he ruthlessly spat in his heart, Smelly whore, don't ever fall into this daddy's hands. However, he didn't dare to say these words out loud. After all, this woman wasn't someone to be trifled with. Let's save her first. Yanqi, hurry and inform master. I'm afraid she's in grave danger, Bai Fei commanded. Yanqi nodded his head as he turned and departed. A gentle glow radiated from Bai Fei's body, enveloping Mo Qingqing's body. After which, streams of warm energy flowed into Mo Qingqing's body, nourishing her. However, she didn't dare to move the dagger embedded in her chest. Mo Tianlin stood at the side, his entire body trembling with anxiety. His eyes were fixed on Hua Xiaoyan, as if he wanted nothing more than to dismember him into a million pieces. Old Mo also arrived. His countenance was extremely unsightly to behold, as he already knew what had happened here. Old Mo, I was in the wrong. I only wanted to play a prank on Miss Mo. I will make amends. Hua Xiaoyan's countenance flickered as he watched Old Man Mo's body tremble with rage. He then opened his mouth to explain. He had already met this madwoman, Mo Qingqing. If Old Mo were to go crazy and kill him without a care for the consequences, his death would be too unjust. At that time, even if the Mo clan were to be buried together with him, it would still be useless. Now he could only endure and calm the Mo clan down. Young Master Hua, please don't move around recklessly. Old Mo coldly stated, suppressing the anger in his heart. Evidently he knew that he had misjudged Hua Xiaoyan, but when he thought of Hua Xiaoyan's background, he could only endure it. Don't worry, I won't leave. Hua Xiaoyan swallowed his anger. Father, kill him. Mo Tianlin roared in rage, his voice somewhat hoarse, causing Hua Xiaoyan's countenance to freeze as he coldly stated, I was only joking. I believe that nothing will happen to Miss Mo. You better think carefully before you speak. You shut up. Old Mo swept a glance at Mo Tianlin. Kill. If those from the major powers outside killed him, the Mo clan would be buried together with him. Now he could only pray that nothing would happen to Mo Qingqing. The silence of the Mo clan was suddenly broken, as the entire residence was enveloped in a tense atmosphere. Not only that, the news of Mo Qingqing's death was also known by those close to her. Bai Fei did her best to save Mo Qingqing's life. After all, Mo Qingqing was the disciple of her master, and if she didn't do her best, her master would definitely blame her. Luckily, she managed to stabilize Mo Qingqing's life. Now, all that was left was to wait for her master to arrive. At this moment, Qin Wentian was in the bamboo cabin, standing in front of the river. As he thought of Mo Qingqing, a gentle smile involuntarily appeared on his face. That silly lass, he wondered how she was doing now. Thinking back to that night when Mo Qingqing wanted to stay behind, Qin Wentian felt a warmth in his heart. That lass had already given her heart to him, and even now, she still hadn't left. It was as though she was waiting for him to leave before she would be willing to leave. Pill Emperor Hall, Qin Wentian murmured. At this moment, a commotion drifted over from behind. Qin Wentian turned his gaze over, and when he saw who it was, an expression of bewilderment appeared on his face. It was actually Nolan. Why was she looking for him? Not only that, Nolan's countenance was extremely unsightly, as though something urgent had happened. Qin Wentian, something happened to Qingqing. Nolan spat out, causing Qin Wentian's heart to pound. After which he dashed out, instantly appearing beside Nolan. What happened to Qingqing? Qin Wentian anxiously asked. It's that bastard Hua Xiaoyan. I heard that he had designs on Qingqing, and that silly lass Qingqing committed suicide. She's still in a coma, and when I went to the Mo residence, the Mo clan forbade anyone from entering. I couldn't even see Qingqing's situation, so I could only come here to look for you. Nolan's eyes reddened. She and Mo Qingqing had been sisters for many years, and now that Mo Qingqing's situation was unknown, she naturally felt sad. Easy. Qin Wentian's mind trembled violently, as though he had been struck by lightning. His countenance instantly paled, and a terrifying chill gushed forth from his body, causing Nolan to be so frightened that she involuntarily retreated. Qingqing. Qin Wentian's heart was in a state of chaos. He soared up into the skies as a pair of Garuda wings appeared on his back. Demonic qi gushed forth from him as demonic yuan energy frenziedly circulated around him. A terrifying gust of wind gusted by as his body transformed into a black beam of light that flickered as he sped away. Hua Xiaoyan. A voice filled with killing intent drifted down from the heavens, filled with boundless rage and killing intent. No one could describe the coldness and anger in Qin Wentian's heart, as well as the fear and worry he felt. This was the first time he was so afraid, never before. Qin Wentian's speed was unprecedentedly fast, as he arced through the skies, speeding towards the direction of the Mo residence. His anxiety was like a burning fire, and he felt that every second was unbearable. After a very long time, he finally saw the Mo residence. Not far away from Qin Wentian, another silhouette could be seen flying over. This silhouette was even faster than before, and when she glanced at Qin Wentian, her eyes were filled with an unfathomable depth, as though she wanted to see through Qin Wentian with a single glance. This was a beautiful young married woman, exuding an air of nobility and elegance, yet exuding a terrifying aura. Her entire body seemed to be enveloped by rays of light, as she transformed into a beam of light and directly entered the Mo residence. The people of the Mo residence couldn't even see her shadow, let alone obstructing her. However, when the people of the Mo residence saw the arrival of Qin Wentian, a few of them soared up into the skies as they roared in rage. Outsiders are not allowed to scram. But before the sound of their voices faded, a roar filled with demonic qi rang out. Abruptly, a terrifying demonic sword shot out with a speed as fast as lightning. Those who blocked the attack instantly evaded it, and after that, they only saw that silhouette rushing into the Mo residence. Qin Wentian soon found Mo Qingcheng. He dove down, and when he saw Mo Qingcheng's white robes dyed red with blood, his body involuntarily trembled. Qingcheng. His silhouette transformed into a blur, leaping through the crowd and landing beside Mo Qingcheng. When he saw the pale countenance of her, his heart ached. "Don't disturb, master." Bai Fei shouted at Qin Wentian. Only now did Qin Wentian notice that the beautiful married woman was treating Mo Qingcheng. "Bai Fei, let's enter." A gentle glow enveloped Mo Qingcheng's body as the beautiful woman led Bai Fei and the other disciples into the room. Qin Wentian didn't dare to enter and disturb them. He could only pray that Qingcheng was safe and sound. "What are you doing here?" Old Mo furrowed his brows as he noticed Qin Wentian's sudden appearance. Qin Wentian slowly turned his gaze over, staring at Hua Xiaoyan, who was standing behind old Mo. A terrifying killing intent gushed forth, madly gushing towards Hua Xiaoyan. Boom! Qin Wentian stepped out, advancing towards Hua Xiaoyan. Old Mo's frown deepened as he blocked Qin Wentian's path of retreat. Qin Wentian stared at old Mo as he pointed his finger at Hua Xiaoyan. Coldly, he stared at old Mo. This bastard caused Qingcheng to become like this. You don't want to kill him, but want to obstruct me? What does the matters of the Mo residence have to do with you? Old Mo berated. This Qin Wentian was simply too impudent. What does the matters of the Mo residence have to do with me? I can't be bothered with the matters of the Mo residence. But now the one in trouble is Qingcheng. Qin Wentian's voice was cold to the extreme, as though it came from the depths of hell. Taking another step forward, he icily stated to old Mo, "Old bastard, scram for me." Chapter 225. Old Mo's countenance instantly turned cold upon hearing Qin Wentian's words. Old bastard? Scram? What status did he have? He was the lord of the Mo residence, Mo Qingcheng's grandfather. If there were no heavenly dipper sovereigns in the Chu country, he would be invincible. Qin Wentian, a young man with some talent, dared to berate him in the Mo residence? What did you say? Old Mo's mood was already extremely bad. Mo Qingcheng's injuries had also caused him to be extremely anxious. How could he tolerate Qin Wentian's arrogance? His body involuntarily radiated a terrifying chill. You don't have the guts to kill me? Let me do it. Scram. Qin Wentian coldly stared at old Mo. He naturally understood that old Mo didn't dare to kill Hua Xiaoyan. Old Mo was afraid of Hua Xiaoyan's identity, causing Mo Qingcheng to be in such a sorry state. Even he didn't dare to kill Hua Xiaoyan. Kill me. Hua Xiaoyan stared at Qin Wentian with a mocking expression on his face. This fellow's aura was only at the first level of Yuanfu. What kind of joke was this? What a complete idiot. This old man was also an idiot. If Qin Wentian really dared to make a move against him, would he even be able to do anything to him? His eyes narrowed as he stared at Qin Wentian with killing intent flickering in his eyes. Against those from the Mo clan, he felt a little guilty. But against Qin Wentian, he was simply courting death. Qin Wentian advanced step by step, while the pressure radiating from old Mo intensified. Qin Wentian's ear-piercing voice was like a slap to his face. How could he tolerate Qin Wentian's impudence? Ignorant fellow. Old Mo's palms blasted out towards Qin Wentian. But at that very instant, an incomparably sharp aura abruptly descended, causing old Mo to feel a sense of crisis looming over him. A gust of wind gusted by as a beautiful silhouette abruptly appeared in front of him, as though she had always been there. It was just a casual battle, but old man Mo felt as if he had fallen into an icehouse, as if his body was about to be crushed into pieces. His palms froze in the air as he stared at the veiled lady in shock. Heavenly Dipper Realm. She's a Heavenly Dipper Realm expert. How could there be such a powerful person around Qin Wentian? You truly don't have the qualifications to be Qingqing's grandfather. It's fine if Qingqing is fine, but if something happens to her, I want you to accompany her in death. Qin Wentian coldly stared at old Mo, his words causing old Mo's entire body to tremble. He was actually threatened by a junior like this, and there was even a Heavenly Dipper Realm existence standing behind the other party. What was going on? If old Master Mo cared about the battle for imperial power, he should have known about these things long ago. Unfortunately, he had never paid attention to this small country, let alone Qin Wentian, the genius of this small country. Qin Wentian walked past old Mo, glaring at Hua Xiaoyan who was not far away from him as his killing intent soared to the heavens. Hua Xiaoyan's eyes flickered as he glanced at Qin. If this woman acted against him, he would definitely die a miserable death. As for Qin Wentian, he didn't care about him at all. However, he didn't expect that there would actually be someone in Chu who had the protection of a Heavenly Dipper sovereign. I'm from the Hua clan of the Moon Continent. May I know who you are? Hua Xiaoyan stared at Qin. A Heavenly Dipper sovereign, and from the looks of it, she was a young and beautiful woman. She should be from the Grand Xia Empire. Qin frowned as she coldly glanced at Hua Xiaoyan, after which she shifted her gaze away, not bothering to look at him. This caused Hua Xiaoyan's countenance to stiffen. This woman was ignoring him. No matter who you are, you will die today. Qin Wentian's aura erupted to the extreme, as a terrifying demonic qi permeated the air. His ink-black hair fluttered in the wind, akin to sharp needles. His blood boiled as his body roared, and a terrifying killing intent gushed forth, causing the gazes of the spectators to land on Qin Wentian. Was this the strength of a genius from Chu? What a terrifying aura. However, they had heard that Hua Xiaoyan was a cultivator at the 4th level of Yuanfu. The disparity between them was simply too great. Not only that, Hua Xiaoyan had also comprehended the mandate of mandate. How could Qin Wentian fight against him? Boom! The Yellow Springs monument flew out, blasting towards Hua Xiaoyan. The blood-colored light from Qin Wentian's body frenziedly gushed into the monument, causing Hua Xiaoyan's countenance to stiffen. He could feel the fluctuations in his blood vessels fluctuating unstably, as his heart pounded unceasingly. Die! Qin Wentian coldly roared. The Yellow Springs monument blasted towards Hua Xiaoyan, as a terrifying blood-colored light cascaded downwards. Hua Xiaoyan felt as though his blood vessels were about to explode as his heart pounded rapidly. Bzzz. A hurricane gusted by as Qin Wentian's silhouette transformed into a blur as he lunged towards Hua Xiaoyan. Wielding the ancient halberd in his hands, he resembled a demonic god, exuding a boundless killing intent. Hua Xiaoyan's aura also erupted forth. With a flick of his palms, a resplendent golden halo appeared in front of him. Lifting his head, he slammed his palms downwards, causing numerous golden swords to fly towards Qin Wentian. The fearsome golden swords possessed a terrifying penetrative power. At the same time, a surge of mandate energy bore down on Qin Wentian, causing him to feel as though his body was about to be pierced through. The ancient halberd in his hands trembled as a boundless amount of divine energy erupted forth. Qin Wentian slashed out with the ancient halberd, as the countless swords coalesced together, transforming into a million beams of sword light that whistled through the air. The sword light intersected, incomparably resplendent. At the same time, the Yellow Springs monument in the air continued smashing towards Hua Xiaoyan, as booming sounds rang out unceasingly. Hua Xiaoyan groaned in agony. Wasn't the blood qi within the monument a little too overwhelming? Hua Xiaoyan's palms danced about as a golden millstone appeared. His countenance turned cold as he blasted it towards the Yellow Springs monument. The golden millstone shone with a resplendent light as it smashed towards the Yellow Springs monument. The Yellow Springs monument whistled through the air as the blood-colored light grew even more intense. Qin Wentian howled in rage as the blood-colored light within his body crazily gushed into the Yellow Springs monument. At this moment, it was as though his sea of consciousness was connected to the Yellow Springs monument, allowing him to sense the terrifying amount of blood qi contained within. However, he had no way to fully control it. I want you to die. Qin Wentian glared at Hua Xiaoyan as he ruthlessly stomped forward. A thunderous boom rang out as the earth trembled. His ancient halberd transformed into a terrifying beam of light as it shot out. At the same time, the Yellow Springs monument in the air collided with the golden millstone. At the same time, a formless blood-colored palm stretched out from the Yellow Springs monument, smashing towards Hua Xiaoyan. Hua Xiaoyan's countenance drastically changed as he coughed out a mouthful of fresh blood, his countenance drastically changing. A brilliant light flashed as Hua Xiaoyan explosively retreated backwards. With a flick of his palms, a golden palm smashed towards Qin Wentian as he turned and fled. Not to mention the fact that Heavenly Dipper sovereigns had yet to act, the crazed Qin Wentian was already a threat to his life. This caused Hua Xiaoyan to feel extremely uncomfortable. After all, he was a cultivator at the 4th level of Yuanfu. The Yellow Springs monument must be too powerful. If not, Qin Wentian would be able to kill him easily. Hua Xiaoyan mused. The Yellow Springs monument was simply too bizarre. I can't stay in Chu any longer. Hua Xiaoyan was incomparably depressed. Who would have thought that he would encounter danger in such a small place like Chu? What a humiliation. Behind him, a terrifying killing intent gushed forth as a frigid aura enveloped his entire body. Hua Xiaoyan's countenance stiffened as he turned his head, only to see the silhouette exuding a towering demonic aura chasing after him. That silhouette had a pair of demonic wings on his back, and his pitch-black eyes shone with an incomparably cold killing intent. If he didn't kill Hua Xiaoyan, he wouldn't rest until he was dead. Fool who doesn't know the immensity of death. Hua Xiaoyan was infuriated. He didn't expect that this fellow would still be so persistent. Pushing his Yuanfu to its limits, Hua Xiaoyan's speed grew increasingly terrifying as he sped towards the dark forest. Bzzz. A raging wind howled as a terrifying mandate of blood descended upon him. Hua Xiaoyan felt an incomparably unbearable pain coursing through his entire body. Casting a glance behind him, he saw that the Yellow Springs monument was actually chasing after him, as though it had grown wings on its back. This caused his countenance to turn extremely ugly to behold. A resplendent light flashed as a fearsome golden sword appeared in Hua Xiaoyan's hands, exuding an incomparable sharpness. Slash. A beam of golden sword light flashed past, slashing towards the Yellow Springs monument. The Yellow Springs monument buzzed, but it didn't budge in the slightest, continuing to chase after Hua Xiaoyan. Hua Xiaoyan's heart pounded faster and faster. Young master. At this moment, a voice drifted over from afar. Upon seeing who it was, Hua Xiaoyan's countenance brightened with joy as he roared. Kill him! Kill the people behind me! A few silhouettes whistled through the air. The person in the lead exuded a terrifying aura. He was an expert at the Heavenly Dipper realm, and behind him were 5 to 6 people who were his servants. Their cultivation bases were all at the lower 3 levels of Yuanfu. Usually, they would help him with the odd jobs, and whenever he was free, he would guide them in their cultivation. In the Grand Xia Empire, this kind of thing was extremely common. Heavenly Dipper sovereigns would have many servants, and many Yuanfu cultivators who weren't from major powers were willing to become the servants of Heavenly Dipper sovereigns. They didn't have outstanding talent, and it was impossible for them to join a major power. Hence, they could only be servants of others, or live a mediocre life. But even a cultivator at the lower 3 levels of Yuanfu would be considered an expert in the Chu country. This was the disparity between them. The Heavenly Dipper sovereign had come here because the matter in the dark forest had been settled. He had received orders to escort Hua Xiaoyan back, but who would have thought that he would actually encounter Hua Xiaoyan being hunted down in a small place like Chu? One could only imagine how infuriated he was. How impudent was Hua Xiaoyan? Maybe this was what it meant by the ignorant are fearless. Although Hua Xiaoyan wasn't that outstanding in the Hua clan, he was still a descendant of the direct bloodline. Not only that, he had an extremely dazzling elder brother that was renowned throughout the entire Grand Xia Empire. Hence, very few people dared to bully Hua Xiaoyan, regardless of whether he was in the Hua clan or not. The Heavenly Dipper sovereign coldly swept his gaze over to Qin Wentian. Stretching out his hand, a terrifying surge of energy gushed forth as he lunged towards Qin Wentian. However, at the same time, a lotus flower appeared, causing a cold wind to blow past. Qin Er's silhouette appeared on top of the lotus flower, exuding a transcendent aura. Hunting me down? I want you to die. Hua Xiaoyan's countenance turned malevolent as he roared madly at Qin Wentian upon seeing that his men had arrived. Qin Wentian turned his gaze onto Qin Cold as ever, Qin upon noticing Qin Wentian's gaze, replied in a melodious voice, "This old man, I can deal with him." A smile appeared on Qin Wentian's face when he saw the cold expression on Qin Er's face. However, when he turned his gaze onto the crazed Hua Xiaoyan, his killing intent surged forth once again. Chapter 226. After speaking, Qin Er's silhouette dashed towards the Heavenly Dipper sovereign. That Heavenly Dipper sovereign could clearly sense how tyrannical Qin Er's aura was. He didn't dare to underestimate her in the slightest. He silently cursed Hua Xiaoyan in his heart. What kind of person did he offend this time? How could he have a Heavenly Dipper sovereign protecting him? This spoiled brat was truly a troublemaker. Maybe it was because of the support of his clan, but he was already used to causing trouble. Sometimes, those from the Hua clan would think that if only Hua Xiaoyan was half as outstanding as his elder brother, they would already be satisfied. Qin and that Heavenly Dipper sovereign instantly clashed, as a terrifying shockwave enveloped the entire space. The old man's silhouette flickered as he soared up into the air, wanting to draw Qin away. As for that little brat at the first level of Yuanfu, he didn't believe that Hua Xiaoyan wouldn't be able to deal with him. 2 beams of light flashed as they soared up into the air. Below, Hua Xiaoyan's smile grew more and more malevolent. "Kill him, all of you attack together, kill him." Hua Xiaoyan's words almost caused the old man to cough out blood. Although his talent wasn't outstanding, he was still a 4th-level Yuanfu cultivator, who had comprehended mandate. Shouldn't he be able to crush someone at the 1st level of Yuanfu with absolute strength? Hua Xiaoyan actually ordered his servants to attack together, causing him to be speechless. Hua Xiaoyan wasn't afraid of Qin Wentian. Although Qin Wentian was powerful, his cultivation base was still much higher than Qin Wentian's. However, that stone monument was too powerful, and with it present, he had no way to deal with Qin Wentian. Hence, he could only join forces with his servants to deal with Qin Wentian. The Yellow Springs monument floated above his head, and abruptly, a resplendent astral light enveloped Qin Wentian's body. An astral soul that emanated an overwhelming amount of demonic qi appeared. It was a beast-type astral soul, and upon seeing this, Hua Xiaoyan's gaze froze. What? It had the head of a dragon, the body of a lion, the tail of a snake, the wings of a great rock, the scales of a xuanwu, and the claws of a kirin. What the hell is this demonic beast astral soul? Hua Xiaoyan cursed in a low voice. He was extremely shocked in his heart. Leaving aside what type of astral soul this was, the golden radiance emanating from it indicated that this astral soul was condensed from an astral soul from the 5th heavenly layer. He had no way to condense an astral soul from the 5th heavenly layer, but his elder brother's 3rd astral soul could. For those who were knowledgeable, they would definitely know that the astral soul in front of them was ranked number 1 on the War Beast Index, the Demon Sovereign Astral Soul. Sadly, Hua Xiaoyan didn't recognize this person. Although these servants were shocked, they didn't recognize this person either. Qin Wentian closed his eyes and took a deep breath. With the help of the beast spirit he had devoured before, his perception shot up to the 9 heavens. The demon's sovereign astral soul lifted its head and howled in rage. Although it was still daytime, an intense beam of starlight cascaded downwards, transforming into a resplendent beam of light, causing the hearts of the people around to tremble violently. What was going on? Roar! The demon's sovereign astral soul let out a low-sounding howl. That resplendent beam of light seemed to connect the demon's sovereign astral soul with some sort of existence in the heavens. The resplendent astral light flickered as one of the Yuanfu within Qin Wentian's Yuanfu started to tremble violently. That was the Yuanfu that corresponded to the demon's sovereign astral soul. Within Qin Wentian's body, there seemed to be a bridge between the Yuanfu and the demon's sovereign astral soul, causing the demon's sovereign astral soul to possess a terrifying amount of energy as it issued a summons towards the heavens. Bzzz. At this moment, a shadow descended from the heavens. This shadow belonged to a demonic beast, a silver-colored great rock. It was none other than the demonic beast of the War Beast Index, the Silver Rock. The body of the Silver Rock gradually solidified, as though it had become a real existence. Abruptly, it opened its eyes, as a terrifying cold light erupted forth, causing the hearts of those who saw it to tremble. This. Hua Xiaoyan and the others stared dumbfoundedly at the scene before them. That's a summoning-type astral soul, able to summon astral war beasts from the heavens. One of them exclaimed in a low voice, his heart pounding. The requirements for summoning an astral soul were extremely high for stellar martial cultivators. Not only did they need to have an extremely strong perception, they also needed to have sufficient astral energy to support the summoning of their astral soul. The strength of the summoned astral soul would determine the strength of the astral warbeast summoned. This was the first time Qin Wentian used the summoning ability of his demon's sovereign astral soul. Earlier, he could clearly sense that as long as he grew stronger, the astral warbeast summoned from the 9 heavens would be even stronger. Ranked number 98 in the Warbeast Index, the Silver Rock belonged to the category of astral warbeasts that could mature. At this moment, the aura emanating from it was at the peak of the 2nd level of Yuanfu. Level skipping summoning. A brilliant light flickered in Qin Wentian's eyes. This was determined by the strength of his Yuanfu, as well as the strength of his summoned astral soul. Quick, kill him quickly, Hua Xiaoyan roared. Only then did the rest of the astral cultivators regain their senses. As they dashed towards Qin Wentian. All of you will die. Qin Wentian's voice was as cold as ice. His killing intent towards Hua Xiaoyan had already reached the extreme. The Silver Rock's eyes gleamed with a terrifying sharpness. Its gigantic body caused a terrifying hurricane to form as its sharp claws slashed towards a silhouette. At the same time, the Yellow Springs monument shone with a crimson light as a towering blood qi filled the skies. Qin Wentian still stood in his original position. His demon's sovereign astral soul was still howling at the heavens, causing Hua Xiaoyan's body to tremble violently. Did he still want to summon more astral war beasts? Crazy, why were they all crazy? How could he control so many astral war beasts? Boom! A terrifying tremor shook the earth as the sky-blazed demonic lion descended from the skies. This was a warbeast ranked number 300 in the Warbeast Index. Qin Wentian had devoured its beast spirit before, hence he could sense its presence. The sky-blazed demonic lion's aura was also at the peak of the 2nd level of Yuanfu. But this wasn't the end. Following which, the gigantic body of the silver-armored bear king appeared on the ground. Akin to a terrifying ancient mountain. It stomped on the ground, crushing everything in its path. Qin Wentian's eyes gleamed with a demonic light. At this moment, he felt as though his brain was about to split apart. These astral warbeasts contained a strand of his intelligence, but because there were so many of them, the pressure on his body was immense. However, Qin Wentian couldn't care less. He wanted these people to die. His killing intent was the same as the killing intent of these astral warbeasts, causing the entire area to tremble. Voila! An expert was torn apart by the Silver Rock. Although the astral warbeasts only exuded an aura at the peak of the 2nd level of Yuanfu, Their combat prowess was in no way inferior to cultivators at the third level of Yuanfu. Qin Wentian's emotions were able to affect them, causing them to enter a berserk state. Initially, Hua Xiaoyan had planned to surround and kill Qin Wentian, but at this moment, the feeling Qin Wentian gave him was getting more and more dangerous. Die! The silver rock arced through the air, pouncing towards Hua Xiaoyan with lightning speed. At the same time, Qin Wentian and the Yellow Springs Monument dashed out. Hua Xiaoyan furiously slashed out with his sword, a golden beam of light wanting to cleave the silver rock apart. However, the silver rock's speed was as fast as lightning, bypassing the sword light and heading straight for his head. Foul beast! Hua Xiaoyan coldly snorted. His palms were akin to the edge of a saber, slashing out with a terrifying penetrative force. Boom! As the Yellow Springs Monument descended, Hua Xiaoyan's heart pounded violently. His blood vessels became unstable, causing him to be in unbearable pain. At the same time, the ancient halberd exploded forth, causing Hua Xiaoyan to be at a loss as to what to do. Die! Hua Xiaoyan was also in a frenzied state. His divine weapon flew towards the Yellow Springs Monument, while his 5 fingers were like hooks. Golden light transformed into sharp claws as they slashed towards Qin Wentian's ancient halberd. Kacha! A crisp sound rang out. Hua Xiaoyan stared at Qin Wentian. He was at the 4th level of Yuanfu. He didn't believe that he wouldn't be able to kill Qin Wentian. At this moment, Qin Wentian also released his grip on the ancient halberd, colliding head-on with Hua Xiaoyan. Boom! A terrifying sound echoed out as Hua Xiaoyan spat out a mouthful of blood. However, his determination to kill Qin Wentian was as resolute as ever. His hands were even sharper than the sharpest swords, as they slammed towards Qin Wentian's arms. A violent roar rang out as Qin Wentian slammed out endless power. Cracking sounds rang out, and he only felt that his arms were about to shatter. But at the same time he staggered and opened his mouth. With a whistling sound, sharp swords pierced straight into his opponent's eyes and head. Hua Xiaoyan's countenance drastically changed as he hurriedly retracted his palms. A golden light shone in front of his head as he explosively retreated. A cold wind gusted by as a terrifying dong sound rang out. Hua Xiaoyan coughed out several mouthfuls of blood, and at the same time he shifted his arms away, only to see a terrifying beam of sword light slashing towards him, wanting to destroy everything in its path. Because he was a troublemaker, his elder brother had told him that no matter what kind of weapon he used, it would be useless against him. Once he met an expert, he would still die. Hence, this life-saving trump card was priceless. Even Heavenly Dipper sovereigns wouldn't be able to catch up to him. Unless it was absolutely necessary, he wouldn't be willing to use it. But now, against a cultivator at the 1st level of Yuanfu, he was forced to use it. Qin Wentian, who was rushing towards Hua Xiaoyan, only saw a blinding flash of light from Hua Xiaoyan's wings. Qin Wentian closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, Hua Xiaoyan's silhouette was already nowhere to be seen. Only a pool of fresh blood remained. You will die a horrible death. Hua Xiaoyan's roar reverberated through the air. His arm was on the verge of breaking. One could very well imagine how much this spoiled brat hated Qin Wentian. Even if I chase you all the way to the Grand Xia Empire, you will still have to die. Qin Wentian stared at the horizon as he blasted out a stone tablet, clearing away the crowd. In the air, the Heavenly Dipper sovereigns and Qing silhouettes could be seen descending. That Heavenly Dipper sovereign's countenance drastically changed as he stared at Qin Wentian. You don't know the meaning of death. After speaking, he blasted out a gigantic palm imprint towards Qin Wentian. Qing silhouette appeared in front of Qin Wentian, blocking the palm imprint, while the Heavenly Dipper sovereigns transformed into a stream of light as they sped away. Not far behind them, Old Mo's silhouette appeared. Earlier he had heard Hua Xiaoyan's roar from afar, and upon seeing the scene of devastation, his countenance paled as he stared at Qin Wentian. You injured him? Qin Wentian turned his gaze over, cold as he stared at old Mo. Qingqing had almost been forced to her death, but as her grandfather, he actually didn't want to kill Hua Xiaoyan. Do you know who he is? Do you know how terrifying the talent of his elder brother is? Old Mo coldly stated. He was worried that the Hua clan would take revenge. Even now, Old Mo was still worried that he might offend the Hua clan. Qin Wentian's countenance was so cold that it was terrifying. Abruptly, he laughed as he walked towards Old Mo, a demonic smile on his face. Talent? Mandate of mandate. Does the mandate of force count? A surge of mandate of force descended upon Old Mo, causing his countenance to stiffen. What about the mandate of demons? Yet another surge of mandate gushed forth, permeating the entire space. The demonic qi exuded from Qin Wentian was terrifying, and the demonic aura radiating from him was also extremely demonic. Dual mandates. Old Mo's heart pounded as he stared at Qin Wentian. Or astral souls? As the sound of Qin Wentian's voice faded, a buzzing sound rang out as 3 astral souls erupted at the same time. A terrifying gust of astral qi engulfed the entire space as a blinding astral light appeared. Rumble. The astral energy in his astral souls surged as the colors of his astral souls changed. Staring at the 3 astral souls above Qin Wentian's head, Old Mo's countenance turned sluggish. 3 astral souls, one with a rich golden luster. 3 astral souls, all originated from the 5th heavenly layer. Is this the talent you wanted? Qin Wentian roared in a low voice as he took a step forward. Old Mo's countenance turned sluggish as he retreated a few steps. His legs softened as he fell to the ground. The scene in front of him was too terrifying. Chapter 227. Is this the talent you wanted? Qin Wentian's words reverberated in Old Man Mo's mind. He sat on the ground, staring at the scene in front of him in astonishment. He could feel his heart pounding violently, many times faster than usual. Qin Wentian, at the first level of Yuanfu, had comprehended 2 mandates. He had condensed 3 astral souls, all of them condensed from constellations in the 5th heavenly layer. Was this really something a human could achieve? He could be considered someone with vast experience and knowledge, but at this moment, he felt that his brain wasn't enough. He stared dumbfoundedly at the resplendent astral souls. 5th heavenly layer, 5th heavenly layer. Old Man Mo murmured. How was this possible? He had seen many geniuses before, and heard even more legends about them. But he had never heard of anyone condensing their first astral soul from the 5th heavenly layer. This was too terrifying. His mind was so shaken that it went numb. The scene in front of him gave him a surreal feeling. Staring at the demonic countenance of the young man in front of him, as well as the coldness in his eyes, Old Man Mo, who was at the peak of Yuanfu, actually felt a trace of fear. How ridiculous would this young man be when he matured? How terrifying would he be? Chu. The Grand Xia Empire should be his sky. It was as though he was destined to compete against the most dazzling geniuses of Grand Xia for glory. That's right, such a young man was actually willing to go crazy for Qingcheng. How laughable was it that he was still prejudiced against him, looking down on his talent. Now that he thought about it, Old Man Mo felt a burning sensation on his face. Before this, he had always felt that Qin Wentian wasn't worthy of Mo Qingcheng. But now he no longer felt that way. Taking a deep breath, Old Man Mo calmed his violently fluctuating heart, but he didn't know what to say. Let's go back and take a look at Qingcheng. Old Man Mo spoke in a low voice, his words causing Qin Wentian's countenance to stiffen. That's right, how is Qingcheng now? If anything happens to Qingcheng, even if you are her grandfather, I won't spare you, Qin Wentian icily stated. After which, his silhouette flickered as he sped towards the direction of the Mo clan. However, he would never forget the matter of him killing Hua Xiaoyan. This man had forced Qingcheng to the brink of despair. He had to die no matter what. Even if he managed to escape to the Grand Xia Empire, he would still have to die. Old Man Mo stood up and stared at the departing back view. However, he didn't blame Qin Wentian at all. The talent Qin Wentian displayed had completely frightened him. The more a person like Qin Wentian cared about Qingcheng, the happier he would be. Right now, he could only pray that nothing would happen to Qingcheng. Buzz. A gust of cold wind blew past. Old Man Mo's expression froze as a silhouette appeared beside him. It was none other than the Heavenly Dipper sovereign masked woman. This mysterious woman's strength was also astonishing. She looked like a fairy from a painting, as if she did not belong to the mortal world. However, she quietly followed beside Qin Wentian. I didn't see anything. Old man Mo felt the cold intent and said. He thought that the other party was afraid that he would expose what he had seen today. Qing'er furrowed her brows, as though she was unhappy. She stared at old man Mo and stated, if you show any more killing intent, I'll kill you. After speaking, Qing'er's silhouette flickered, disappearing like a gust of wind, causing old man Mo's expression to stiffen. An expression of desolation could be seen on old man Mo's face. He had truly aged, and today was no longer his era. Today, the little bit of self-confidence he had was completely shattered. In the Mo residence, Qin Wentian arrived at Mo Qingqing's courtyard. There were many people standing guard outside, and Qin Wentian directly barged in. Mo Tianlin waved his hands, and no one blocked his path. How is Qingqing? Qin Wentian stared at Mo Tianlin as he inquired. She's still inside, Senior Luo. He is currently treating her. Mo Tianlin's countenance was filled with worry. What about that bastard Hua Xiaoyan? He managed to escape, but he will definitely die. Qin Wentian's countenance was filled with unwavering determination. Hua Xiaoyan isn't an ordinary person. You have to be careful as well. Mo Tianlin reminded. His impression of Qin Wentian had always been extremely good. During the Junlin banquet, he had even joked about Qin Wentian and Mo Qingqing, wanting to matchmake Mo Qingqing and Qin Wentian. However, because of old man Mo's attitude, he couldn't say anything. But today, old Master Mo's actions had truly disappointed him. Hua Xiaoyan had committed such a despicable act. Yet old Master Mo didn't even bother to kill him. Although old Master Mo was worried that the Mo clan would take revenge on him, old Master Mo couldn't help but want to tear Hua Xiaoyan into 1,000 pieces. Right. Qin Wentian lightly nodded his head, yet his gaze was fixated on the room in front of him. This wait lasted for several hours. The entire room was enveloped by a layer of light, and there was even a medicinal fragrance wafting in the air. Luo He was currently concocting medicinal pills inside. It was impossible for Luo He to have all sorts of medicinal pills on her, and with Mo Qingqing's injuries, she could only use the medicinal ingredients she had on her. After a long period of time, the fragrance dissipated, and a beam of light shot into the room. Qin Wentian and Mo Tianlin's hearts were burning with anxiety, but now they could only wait. What made Mo Tianlin feel strange was that old man Mo had also returned, yet he silently acknowledged Qin Wentian's existence. Upon seeing Qin Wentian standing there, he didn't say anything. Yeah. A crisp sound rang out as the door opened. The gazes of the crowd were instantly fixated on the door, only to see Bai Fei, Jingyu and the rest walking out, with Luo He following behind them. Senior, how's Qingqing? Mo Tianlin instantly stepped forward and inquired. You must be Qingqing's father, right? Her life is temporarily not in danger, but it will take some time for her to fully recover. I have to bring her back to the Pill Emperor Hall. Luo He calmly replied, causing the stone in the hearts of the crowd to finally be lifted. Qin Wentian also let out a long sigh. His heart was finally at ease. His aura was no longer as cold as before, and the few hours of waiting earlier felt as long as a few years to him. Many thanks, Senior. Qingqing, I'll have to trouble Senior then. Mo Tianlin bowed to Luo He, feeling gratitude from the depths of his heart. To be able to save Mo Qingqing in such a situation, it was already the greatest fortune. However, at this moment, the sound of wind drifted over could be heard as a group of silhouettes appeared in the airspace above the Mo residence. This group of people was extremely majestic, exuding an extraordinary aura. The instant they appeared, old Mo frowned. The countenances of those from the Mo clan were extremely unsightly, because they saw Hua Xiaoyan. It was this fellow who caused Mo Qingqing to be in such a miserable state. Mo Qingqing was the #1 beauty in Chu, and her personality was also good. In the Mo residence, there was no one who didn't like her. There was no one in the Mo residence who didn't want to slay Hua Xiaoyan with their own hands. At this moment, Hua Xiaoyan had a malevolent expression on his face. One of his arms hung limply in the air, as though it was about to break off at any moment. A terrifying killing intent gushed forth from him as he stared fixedly at Qin Wentian. Big brother, it's him. He's the one who severed one of my arms. His strength is inferior to mine, but he has an extremely powerful divine weapon. He sneak attacked me, and that's why I was slashed by his sword. Hua Xiaoyan roared with righteous indignation. At this moment, he no longer had the unfathomable aura he had when he was in the Mo residence. His true nature was completely exposed. Qin Wentian stared at Hua Xiaoyan in the air, his eyes filled with ice-cold killing intent. The young man beside Hua Xiaoyan swept a glance at Qin Wentian. This young man had a slender build, and his face was like jade. His eyes were like the stars in the sky, filled with vigor. His gaze was as sharp as swords, and he exuded a sense of superiority. Big brother, kill him. Hua Xiaoyan didn't spare him. Shut up. Hua Xiaoyan's elder brother snorted in a low voice. He understood Hua Xiaoyan's personality very well, and he knew that this fellow's words could only be half believed. He must have offended someone else again. If not, how could the Pill Emperor Hall allow a mere first-level Yuanfu cultivator to bully him? And at this moment, the gazes of those from the Pill Emperor Hall were all somewhat strange. Senior Luohe, can you help my younger brother to reattach his severed arm? Although the young man felt that something was wrong, Hua Xiaoyan was, after all, his younger brother. Reattach his severed arm? He still has the face to see me? Luohe inclined her head and stared at the young man, her countenance cold. If it weren't for the fact that she was giving face to this young man, she would have already killed Hua Xiaoyan. Xiaoman, what have you done? Why aren't you apologizing to Senior? The young man berated. Hua Xiaoyan's gaze shifted to Luohe, as though he was afraid of her. Senior, this junior was muddle-headed for a moment. I only wanted to play a joke on Miss Qingqing. Who would have thought that I would make such a grave mistake? Hua Xiaoyan knew when to lower his head and respectfully admitted his mistake. This Luohe wasn't an ordinary mortal from the Pill Emperor Hall. She was the daughter of the Pill Emperor. Who would dare to not give her face? Let alone now, he wanted her to treat his injuries. Don't give me that. Luohe snorted coldly. You wanted to sully my disciple, causing her life to be hanging by a thread. I'm already giving face to the Hua clan by not killing you. Furthermore, I wasn't the one who chopped off her arm. Upon hearing Luohe's words, Hua Xiaoyan's elder brother's countenance turned sluggish. Only now did he know what kind of shameful things this useless younger brother of his had done. Traces of coldness involuntarily flickered in his sword-like eyes. Suddenly, a cold light swept out from his body. Argah. This scene caused the gazes of the spectators to freeze. Hua Xiaoyan's elder brother had personally broken his arm. Elder brother. Hua Xiaoyan's eyes were bloodshot as he stared at his elder brother. He couldn't understand why his elder brother had personally destroyed his hope. His arm was now completely gone. Get down, kneel down and apologize to Senior Luohe. The eyes of the young man sharpened as he stared at Hua Xiaoyan. This fellow truly didn't know how to weigh the consequences. Based on Luohe's attitude, it was obvious that Hua Xiaoyan held that disciple in high regard. Hua Xiaoyan didn't care about the consequences of his actions. He was truly spoiled rotten. This arm could be considered a lesson for him. If he still didn't know how to weigh the consequences in the future, he would lose his life sooner or later. Luohe stared at the young man in bewilderment. No wonder he was ranked first in the Heavenly Fate rankings. Chapter 228. Hua Taishu, with a cultivation base at the peak of Yuanfu, was the top ranker of the Heavenly Fate rankings. The Heavenly Fate rankings was a heavy-handed ranking list compiled by the Venerate Heavens sect of the Ginkgo continent. It was considered the most authoritative ranking list in Grand Xia. For countless years, the names of the most outstanding characters in Grand Xia would be found in the rankings compiled by the Venerate Heavens sect. The Heavenly Dipper rankings, Heavenly Fate rankings, Warbeast Index and many others were all compiled by the Venerate Heavens sect. The Warbeast Index didn't garner too much attention. Only those with demonic beast astral souls would pay attention to it. As for the Heavenly Dipper rankings, there was no need to doubt it. The names recorded on the Heavenly Dipper rankings were the most dazzling characters in Grand Xia, representing the peak powers of the Grand Xia Empire. Especially for the top 36 rankers of the Heavenly Dipper rankings, they were also known as the 36 Heavenly Dipper rankings. The Heavenly Fate rankings was a ranking below the Heavenly Dipper rankings. It recorded the names of 360 Yuanfu cultivators, and the rankings would be updated once a year. Although there were 360 names on the list, how many experts were there in the Grand Xia Empire? Yuanfu cultivators could be found everywhere, and even those at the 9th level of Yuanfu, or even those at the pinnacle of Yuanfu. However, it was extremely difficult to be ranked on the list. Basically, only those at the pinnacle of Yuanfu would be able to be ranked on the list. The only exception would be those with monstrous combat prowess. The top 10 rankers of the Heavenly Fate rankings were all exceedingly dazzling existences, their names shaking the entire Grand Xia. Their future potential was limitless, and even if some of them were already very old, it didn't matter. Being able to enter the top 10 at such a young age meant that their comprehension of mandates had already reached a terrifying level, and their combat prowess was incomparably tyrannical. It was just that their cultivation speed was slower, and they were late bloomers. One could very well imagine how dazzling it was to become the top ranker of the Heavenly Fate rankings. In the boundlessly vast Grand Xia, who didn't know that even the arrogant Ouyang Guangxing viewed Hua Taishu as his idol? He was determined to surpass Hua Taishu in the future, becoming a character as outstanding as him. It could be said that although Ouyang Guangxing had some fame now, when compared to Hua Taishu, he paled in comparison. There was once an old man at the Heavenly Dipper Sovereign who wanted to test Hua Taishu's strength. After both of them exchanged blows, he announced to the outside world that Hua Taishu's combat prowess was unbelievably strong. As for who won and who lost, there was no need to say anything else. It was precisely because he had an elder brother like Hua Taishu that Hua Xiaoyan was able to strut around in the outside world, and was referred to as a spoiled brat. However, he didn't do so because he admired the glory of his parents. Rather, he basked in the glory of his elder brother, Hua Taishu. And it was precisely because of how dazzling he was that even the daughter of the Pill Emperor, Luo He, had to give him face, not daring to look down on Hua Taishu in the slightest. If not, given Luo He's status in Grand Xia, even those stronger than her would have to be polite to her. If it wasn't for Hua Taishu, she would have already killed 10 Huazioyans. Would he still dare to come back here to cause trouble? Hua Xiaoyan stared at the sharpness in his elder brother's eyes as his heart crumbled. He knew that his elder brother was serious. It's all because of him. Hua Xiaoyan glared at Qin Wentian, wanting nothing more than to tear Qin Wentian into 1,000 pieces. A mere brat from Chu actually caused him to lose an arm. And now, he even had to kneel down and apologize. Humiliation, humiliation, humiliation. However, he still obediently landed on the ground, and knelt in front of Luo He. Junior Hua Xiaoyan is in the wrong. I beg for senior's forgiveness. Upon seeing this scene, Hua Taishu turned to Luo He. Senior Luo He, if one arm isn't enough, why don't you just kill this vile spawn? Luo He glanced at Hua Taishu. His eyes were calm. It was impossible to tell what he was thinking. However, Luo He was very clear that Hua Taishu had personally severed one of Hua Xiaoyan's arms, and even forced him to kneel down and apologize. It wasn't because he was afraid of her, it was because he didn't want to offend her, the daughter of the Pill Emperor. Hua Xiaoyan was, after all, the younger brother of Hua Taishu, born from the same parents. Everyone in Grand Xia knew how much Hua Taishu doted on his younger brother. Now that he had given her face, it was all because he wanted to mend their relationship. But if she really killed Hua Xiaoyan, things would become even more complicated. Maybe Hua Taishu wouldn't say anything on the surface, but she would have one more terrifying enemy. Forget it, since he has already severed an arm, consider it as an apology. Qingqing's life is no longer in danger, so this matter ends here. Also, don't look for trouble with the Mo clan. Luo He indifferently spoke, and didn't pursue the matter any further. Since Hua Taishu had given her enough face, it wouldn't be good for her to let the relationship between the two of them sour. For someone like Hua Taishu, even if she couldn't become his friend, she couldn't become his enemy either. Hua Taishu had the same attitude towards her. As the daughter of the Pill Emperor, a single sentence from her could cause many experts to throw their lives away for her. Senior, you don't have to worry about this. Hua Taishu nodded his head. Hua Xiaoyan only has himself to blame. Since he had already admitted his mistake, he had to act like he was admitting his mistake. Given his status, it was impossible for him to take revenge after forcing Hua Xiaoyan to kneel and admit his mistake. Wouldn't that be akin to slapping his own face? Get up! Hua Taishu roared to Hua Xiaoyan. Big brother, but... Hua Xiaoyan's gaze swept over to Qin Wentian, wanting to continue speaking. Shut up! Hua Taishu furrowed his brows. Hua Xiaoyan gritted his teeth. He could only endure. Hua Taishu's gaze slowly shifted over, landing on Qin Wentian as he calmly asked, "Do you feel a killing intent radiating from you?" Qin Wentian inclined his head, staring at Hua Taishu. This person was extraordinary. Even Luo he had to give him face. But so what of it? Could it be that this matter would end here just because of Luo he? Things wouldn't be so simple. He had to kill Hua Xiaoyan no matter who he was. However, after knowing that Qingqing's life wasn't in danger, Qin Wentian also calmed down. Given the current situation, it was impossible for him to rush up and kill Hua Xiaoyan. If he did so, he would be buried together with Hua Xiaoyan. Even Qing, or wouldn't be able to protect him. Hua Xiaoyan said that you borrowed the power of a divine weapon. But even so, you were still able to cause him to be in such a miserable state. This shows that your combat prowess is extremely powerful. If there's a chance, you should pay a visit to the Grand Xia Empire. Hua Taishu's voice contained no traces of anger. It was as though he was conversing with an old friend. In that place there are many geniuses like you. Hua Taishu stretched his hands out, as rays of light cascaded down from the heavens onto his palms. The rays of light abruptly turned sharp, resembling terrifying swords. With a wave of Hua Taishu's hand, the beams of light transformed into a rain of swords, whistling through the air as they shot towards the distance. The might they exuded was extremely shocking. Only by surpassing them will you have the qualifications to establish yourself in the Grand Xia Empire. Senior Luo he, farewell. Hua Taishu bowed slightly. After speaking, his palms abruptly moved as he grabbed hold of Hua Xiaoyan's body. Like a formless gust of wind, Hua Taishu soared through the air, appearing far away in the blink of an eye. With one hand clasped behind his back, he exuded a carefree aura, leaving only the view of his back to the spectators. Those from the Hua clan glanced at Qin Wentian before following after Hua Taishu. They had come with such ferocity, yet when they left, it was as if nothing had happened. Hua Taishu didn't make a move against Qin Wentian to avenge Hua Xiaoyan. He only left behind a few lines of tranquil words, and from those few lines, the crowd could feel the pride and arrogance in his voice. In that place, there are many geniuses like you. Only by surpassing them, would you have the qualifications to stand on the Grand Xia Empire. Merely having the qualifications to stand on the Grand Xia Empire? Although this was somewhat arrogant, wasn't it true? Qin Wentian stood there, his countenance calm as he stared at the departing silhouettes. Was this matter over just like that? Obviously not. Based on what Hua Xiaoyan had done to Mo Qingqing, how could he not die? He would definitely go to the Grand Xia Empire, and it wouldn't take too long. Heading to Grand Xia. Was it merely to gain the qualifications to stand on the Grand Xia Empire? It's about time for us to leave, Luo he indifferently stated. After which, she stepped into the room and walked out with Mo Qingqing in her arms. Old Mo Tianlin, and Qin Wentian all walked up to the unconscious Mo Qingqing. Could it be that they didn't even have a chance to bid farewell to her? Staring at the haggard countenance of Mo Qingqing, Qin Wentian's determination grew even more resolute. Leave her to me, don't worry. Luo he calmly spoke upon seeing the worried expressions on the faces of Mo Tianlin and the rest. Senior, we didn't mean it that way, old Mo stammered. If there's an opportunity, you all can come to the Pill Emperor Hall to visit her, Luo he stated. Luo he added. After which, she soared up into the air, and those from the Pill Emperor Hall also followed suit. Just when Bai Fei was about to leave, she seemed to have thought of something. She turned and walked to the side of Qin Wentian as she stated, "This time around, You're lucky that my master was here. That's why the Hua clan didn't make a move against you. I know you have deep feelings for Qingcheng, but I still have to give you a piece of advice. Don't come to the Pill Emperor Hall to look for her. The two of you are not compatible. After speaking, Bai Fei paused for a moment before continuing. That person earlier, his name is Hua Taishu, the top ranker of the Heavenly Fate rankings of Grand Xia. He's also the strongest Yuanfu cultivator in the entire Grand Xia Empire. In the future, he would definitely become one of the strongest characters in the Grand Xia Empire. It's better for you to be at ease and continue being a genius. Leaving behind these words, Bai Fei turned and departed. Jing Yu and Yan Qi also cast a meaningful glance at Qin Wentian. This time around, they could see how much Luo he valued Mo Qingcheng. This made them understand that in the future, Mo Qingcheng would definitely be an extremely important character in the Pill Emperor Hall. Although there was a touching story between her and Qin Wentian, it all came to an end here. This would be the ending of the story. Hua Taishu. Qin Wentian murmured in a low voice as he stared at the gradually disappearing silhouette. Nobody knew what he was thinking about. With a flicker of his silhouette, Qin Wentian also left the Mo residence. Old Mo stood there in a daze as he stared at the two departing silhouettes. Hua Taishu, the top ranker of the Heavenly Fate rankings. Qin Wentian, 3 star souls, both originated from the 5th heavenly layer. Are they really not on the same level? In the future, how will their paths intersect? Chapter 229. The Chu country, after experiencing the baptism of the storm, returned to its former tranquility. The royal capital of the Chu country was now the busiest and most flourishing place, the Emperor Star Academy. The reorganized Emperor Star Academy constantly absorbed new blood, and after the elders returned to the academy, they swore that they would create an even more glorious era for the Emperor Star Academy, nurturing even more experts, so strong that no storm would be able to affect them. The matter regarding the Mo clan wasn't noticed by many. The people in the royal capital only knew that Mo Qingcheng had been taken in as a disciple by an external transcendent power. This caused many to feel pity in their hearts. The number one beauty of the Chu country had to leave just like that. Based on Mo Qingcheng's beauty and talent, she was destined to never belong to the Chu country again. Qin Wentian was still the topic of conversation in the royal capital. In less than 2 years, he had become a legend in the Chu country. He was worshipped by countless youths, and was viewed as an idol. Every time Qin Wentian appeared in the Emperor Star Academy, it would cause a huge commotion. In the chaos this time around, Qin Wentian's name became more and more legendary. It was as though he was the one who single-handedly pushed the changes of the Chu country. However, the people in the royal capital gradually discovered that the stories about Qin Wentian were getting fewer and fewer. It was as though he was gradually fading out of the royal capital. In fact, there were already very few people who had seen him in the royal capital. Many people were even guessing that Qin Wentian had already left the royal capital. Based on his talent, the Chu country wasn't a place where he could stay for long. Sooner or later, he would have to roam the world outside. In the bamboo hut, on the other side of the river, there was a floating space about the size of a training ground. At this moment, a young man with disheveled hair could be seen there, wielding an ancient halberd in his hands. He pierced out again and again, as though there was no end to his attacks. Every time the ancient halberd pierced out, a whistling wind would be generated, as though a gigantic force was lashing out against the air. After thousands of times, the young man would sit down cross-legged and close his eyes in contemplation, entering a state of absolute silence. Day after day, month after month, cultivation seemed to have no end. On the mountain peak behind him, a lithe and graceful silhouette flickered as she descended, arriving at the waist of the mountain. However, she merely stood at a distance and watched quietly. Not far away, the ancient halberd of the young man abruptly pierced out, slamming into a gigantic boulder beside him. Poochie! A light sound rang out from the gigantic boulder, after which, terrifying rumbling sounds could be heard as the rocks on the mountain peak behind the gigantic boulder began to violently explode. The young man pointed his ancient halberd downwards as a satisfied smile appeared on his face. He turned around and walked towards the graceful figure. Bang! A thunderous sound rang out from behind the young man. The gigantic boulder directly disintegrated into dust, leaving nothing behind. This caused the beautiful eyes of the young woman who saw the scene to shine brightly. What divine ability is this? And Liu Yan's figure flashed to arrive before Qin Wentian, and she asked with a smile. Now Qin Wentian's eyes were deep, and he gradually got rid of the childishness. He looked more like an adult, which made people feel very comfortable when they looked at him. Great Dream Halberd Art. Qin Wentian smiled. This halberd art was the third stance he created based on his previous two stances, the void-shattering stance. The attack power of this stance was several times stronger compared to the previous two stances, Mountain Splitter and Fallen Star. Not only that, Qin Wentian could already unleash the full power of the Great Dream Halberd art without relying on the ancient halberd. Such a powerful innate technique. Why haven't I heard of it before? And Liu Yan smiled. The Great Dream Halberd art was something I comprehended during a period of boredom. It's normal that you haven't heard of it. Qin Wentian humbly replied, causing in Liu Yan's beautiful eyes to brighten. You are indeed a rare demon-level talent. The Yuan meteor stones and cultivation materials you wanted, I've brought them to you. And Liu Yan rubbed the interspatial ring on her finger as several Yuan meteor stones appeared on the ground, each of them filled with dense astral energy. It's my honor to have beauty and make a trip here personally. Qin Wentian smiled as he kept the Yuan meteor stones. The consumption of resources for cultivation was extremely high, and if he wanted to increase his cultivation speed, he would need to borrow the energy from the Yuan meteor stones. Not only that, the further he progressed, the greater the amount of resources he would need. The path of cultivation was extremely difficult. No wonder even the vast Chu country was unable to produce any heavenly dipper sovereigns. Not to mention talent and comprehension, even the amount of resources required was insufficient. It's not easy for Francis to escape every time. Not only that, can't I come here to see you? And Liu Yan's smile was filled with hints of ambiguity. Staring at the beauty in front of him, Qin Wentian shrugged his shoulders and laughed. Of course it's a pity. It's just that beauty entreats me so well. I have no way to repay you. Forget it. The value of your divine imprints far exceeds what the divine weapon pavilion gave you. And Liu Yan smiled lightly. Oh yeah, Chu Wuwei investigated those assassins who were with Chu Tianjiao that day. Although they didn't pose any threat to you, they were still a force to be reckoned with. Chu Wuwei was the one who contacted Murin. And now, Murin has already been expelled from the Star River Association. Chu Wuwei has imprisoned him in the Black Stronghold. Qin Wentian nodded his head, feeling somewhat bewildered. Too many things had happened, and he had almost forgotten to find trouble with Murin. Yet, Murin was still keeping an eye on him. Okay, I'm leaving. If there's a chance, I'll come and visit you again. And Liu Yan bade farewell. See you next time. Qin Wentian smiled as he nodded his head, sending Liu Yan off with his gaze. After which, he returned to the edge of the cliff, breathing in the fresh air of nature. Clutching the Yuan meteor stone in his hands, he immersed himself in the wondrous scenery created by the tiny astral being. During these days, he had unlocked the memories of many of the astral fragments. Although the scenes were fragmented, Qin Wentian could still feel the life experiences of the middle-aged man. If that middle-aged man was really his old fogey father, then every time he saw it, it would be the experiences of his old fogey's life. Cultivation was an extremely dry and uninteresting matter. However, there were people who had an intense thirst for power. Every bit of progress they made would give birth to a strong sense of motivation. Cultivation was something that made people excited. Qin Wentian was one such person. He could feel himself improving day by day, and the thirst in his heart was too strong. Hua Xiaoyan hadn't died yet. The Nine Mystical Palace was still unable to contend against him. Qingqing would soon become an important character in the Pill Emperor Hall, and the countless heroes of the Grand Xia Empire. All of these pushed him forward, causing the blood in his heart to burn eternally. Time flowed by bit, and in the blink of an eye, it was winter again. In the airspace of Chu, snowflakes drifted down. After a few days of heavy snowfall, the entire Chu country was covered in a layer of snow-white armor. The snowy peak where Qin Wentian was at was already covered in snow, and the scene was filled with a dreamlike beauty. On the peak of the mountain, the silhouette of a young man stood there, gazing at the Chu country in the distance. Beside him, a pure white snowy puppy, as though it had fused as one with the earth, had its head held high in the air. Similar to Qin Wentian, it was also gazing into the distance. Behind Qin Wentian, a maiden of absolute beauty stood there, as though she was someone from a painting. Qing gazed at the snowy scenery before her. Stretching out her dainty hands, she allowed the snowflakes to land on her palms. The scenery in front of her was so beautiful. If there were others here, they would discover that this scene was even more beautiful than the scenery before them. Maybe this scene itself was already a beautiful scene. Qin Wentian turned his head only to see Qing, tilting her head upwards, as she stretched out her hands to catch the falling snowflakes. He couldn't help but be in a daze. This mysterious maiden was akin to a celestial maiden. Is it beautiful? Qin Wentian asked in a low voice. Qin Wentian retracted his hands, as he stared at Qin Wentian. His eyelashes flickered, but he didn't say anything. This caused Qin Wentian to feel extremely helpless. She was truly a cold beauty, cherishing her words like gold. Even if he wanted to converse with her, it would be extremely difficult. Shall we descend the mountain for a walk? Qin Wentian asked again. Qing's beautiful eyes stared at him. It was still unknown what she was thinking about. Just when Qin Wentian thought that she would remain silent, Qing lightly nodded her head. Okay. Isn't this good? Qin Wentian laughed. After which, he carried Little Rascal in his arms and soared into the skies. The royal capital was covered in a blanket of white snow. Qin Wentian leisurely walked through the snow, leaving behind footprints on the ground. As he passed by a small inn, Qin Wentian halted his steps, only to see 3 silhouettes appearing there. These 3 silhouettes were none other than Chu Wuwei, Immortal Drunken Wine, and Chu Mang. Chu Wuwei, as the Emperor of Chu, was actually so carefree and leisurely. He even liked to drink with his good friend Immortal Drunken Wine occasionally. This point caused Qin Wentian to feel even more confident in his choice. Chu Wuwei, who was unable to cultivate, might really become a brilliant ruler, bringing the martial path of Chu to a whole new level. Wentian, do you want to come over for a drink or two? Chu Wuwei couldn't help but smile when he saw Qin Wentian. It's fine, I wish to roam around. Qin Wentian smiled. Sure, remember to bring this piece of wood with you when you leave. Chu Wuwei laughed. He didn't continue persuading Qin Wentian to stay behind. I will look for you. Qin Wentian smiled as he nodded his head. Chu Wuwei was willing to entrust Chu Mang to him. It was also because of his trust in him. His magnanimity far surpassed that of ordinary people. Seeing Qin Wentian departing, followed by a peerless beauty, Chu Wuwei and Immortal Drunken Wine exchanged glances as a smile appeared on their faces. This fellow was truly extraordinary. Qin Wentian walked aimlessly. Occasionally there would be people who would stop and glance at him, but Qin Wentian would only smile in response. At this moment 2 more people hurriedly walked past him. Luyan, hurry up and leave. A young man couldn't help but be startled when he saw his girlfriend standing there in a daze. Qin Wentian noticed that Luyan had also stopped. She seemed to have changed quite a bit. She seemed more haggard than before, and no longer had the youthful vigor she once had. Glancing at Lu Yan's boyfriend, he realized that it wasn't Yi Zhan. Most probably after the fall of the Yi clan, they had already broken up. Smiling and nodding his head to Lu Yan, Qin Wentian continued walking forward, while Lu Yan stood there in a daze. Her eyes were slightly red as she stared at the fluttering snowflakes in the air. For some unknown reason, she felt a tinge of sadness in her heart. Unknowingly, Qin Wentian arrived in front of an ancient tree. Upon seeing this ancient tree, Qin Wentian smiled as he walked over and sat down on the snowy ground, with his back leaning against the tree. Little Rascal squatted by Qin Wentian's side as it inclined its head to look at him. Its intelligent eyes flickered with a different kind of light. Am I very dumb? Qin Wentian suddenly asked. Little Rascal nodded its head, as a smile could be seen in its intelligent eyes. Qin Wentian also smiled warmly when he saw the expression on Little Rascal's face. Back then, when the young girl sat under the tree with him and called him an idiot, he had asked Little Rascal this question. Leaning against the ancient tree, Qin Wentian stared ahead. It was as though he could see the beautiful young girl clad in white, smiling sweetly at him. His memories were like a painting, just like yesterday. Where was she? Chapter 230. The territory of Grand Xia was boundless, and there were countless cities within it. However, there were a total of 9 cities, known as the 9 continents. The 9 continents were the 9 central cities of Grand Xia. All the transcendent powers were located within the 9 continents. The 9 continents were respectively Qin Continent, Azure Continent, Spirit Continent, Ginkgo Continent, War Continent, Wind Continent, Demon Continent, Swallow Continent and Moon Continent, among which the Azure Continent, the Spirit Continent, the Demon Continent and the Swallow Continent were located at the 4 corners of Grand Xia, guarding the 4 corners. The distance between them was the furthest, and the Azure Continent was the closest to Chu. The Ginkgo Continent, Moon Continent and War Continent were all located in the central region of Grand Xia. The Moon Continent was also known as the Qi of the 9 continents. The atmosphere of the 9 continents were all gathered here, and the place was filled with heroes. The Pill Emperor Hall was one of the transcendent powers of the Moon Continent. It was unknown how many years of history it had existed. But no matter how turbulent the Grand Xia Empire was, the position of the Pill Emperor Hall had never wavered. Their foundation wasn't damaged, and they continued to grow. Among the transcendent powers of Grand Xia, the Pill Emperor Hall could be ranked within the top 5. Maybe the strength of the Pill Emperor Hall couldn't be ranked within the top 5, but they were too unique. Once the Grand Xia Empire fell into chaos, no one would be willing to make a move against the Pill Emperor Hall. The Pill Emperor Hall occupied a vast territory in the central region of the Moon Continent, exuding a majestic aura. Numerous ancient pavilions stood tall, and there were traces of celestial qi within. Passers-by would occasionally glance at the Pill Emperor Hall, as expressions of envy and admiration could be seen on their faces. Occasionally, there would be young men and women walking out from the Pill Emperor Hall. Their heads were held high, and a faint arrogance could be seen in the center of their brows. Every time they appeared, they would attract the admiration of the passers-by. Bypassing the majestic buildings, on a towering platform, a lonely silhouette stood there, gazing into the horizons. This silhouette was clad in white, and her demeanor was cold and indifferent. Her countenance was so beautiful that it was suffocating, and she exuded an extraordinary aura. Such an aura gave off a sense of divinity, causing people to feel a sense of inviolability. However, her watery eyes did not seem to be happy. It was as if there was a hint of sadness in them. Junior sister, Master wants you to go over. Today, she will teach you the Qi observation technique, and use Qi to identify pills. At this moment, a young man stood not too far away and called out to the girl in front of him. Got it, the beautiful woman replied coldly, with a temperament that kept people at arm's length. Behind her, Jingyu had a complicated expression on his face when he heard her words. In the depths of his eyes, there was an unconcealable adoration. However, he had already learnt how to gradually conceal this adoration. Ever since his junior sister woke up, she had always been cold. Compared to the first time he saw her, her demeanor had changed greatly. This was especially so after his master helped her open her apertures. Her entire body was shrouded in a halo of divinity, exuding a sense of nobility and coldness, causing people to not dare to profane her. Her heart was different from ordinary people. After she opened her apertures, she was able to cultivate some of the more powerful alchemy techniques of the Pill Emperor Hall. In just a short period of time, her achievements in alchemy were already on par with his. In fact, she even seemed to have surpassed him. This caused Jingyu's feelings for her to gradually fade, and he could only hide his admiration for her in the depths of his heart. Because he understood that the beauty in front of him was already someone he was not worthy of. Was she still thinking about him? Maybe with enough time, she would forget about him. They were people from different worlds. During this period of time, There were even many elders from major powers who hinted to his master that they wanted to form a marriage alliance. However, his master didn't even bother with them. The names of those elders were all extremely outstanding characters. Turning around, the young man silently departed. The beauty still stood there, as a gentle breeze ruffled her white robes. Her long black hair fluttered in the wind, and her eyes were so beautiful, yet so desolate. The moon continent was extremely vast, so vast that it could be compared to tens of Chu's royal capital combined. Just this city alone already had an uncountable number of people. Although the Pill Emperor Hall was located in the center of the city, to the vast majority of people, it was still an unreachable existence. The Pill Emperor Hall was separated from ordinary people by a heavenly mirror. A heavenly mirror that couldn't be crossed. Everyone could only stare up at it in admiration. In the eastern city of the moon continent, there was a never-ending stream of people. In the midst of the crowd, 3 silhouettes strolled about, their gazes filled with curiosity and anticipation. In the embrace of the person in the middle, there was an adorable little snow-white demon cub. The eyes of the person in the middle roamed about unceasingly, contemplating this ancient and majestic city. How majestic! Chu's royal capital is nothing compared to this place. There's no way to compare at all. The fatty on the left narrowed his eyes, sneaking glances at the passers-by. Indeed, there's no way to compare. The burly fellow on the right nodded his head. His countenance was somewhat innocent. Although he had feelings for Chu, the disparity between the two was too great. Boss, the beauties here have such good demeanor. Fatty tugged on the arm of the middle-aged man, as he shifted his gaze to the side. Look at that beauty clad in a jade-green dress. She's tall and voluptuous, as well as exuding an aura of coldness. TSK, if only we could be friends. Qin Wentian rolled his eyes when he heard Fatty's words. This damnable Fatty was truly a weirdo. The beautiful lady beside him frowned, as she stared at Fan Lu, causing Fan Lu to hurriedly cover his mouth with his hands. This pair of ears were really sensitive. Beauty, I'm only praising you for your beauty. I just want to be friends with you. I have no other intentions. Fatty trembled as he replied. You still want to have other intentions? The countenance of the beautiful lady turned unsightly. The eyes of this damnable Fatty were a little too shameless, staring at her with a lecherous expression. I'm sorry, he doesn't know how to talk. Qin Wentian nodded his head apologetically to the young lady. The young lady inclined her head and glanced at Qin Wentian. And upon seeing Qin Wentian's extraordinary demeanor, her gaze softened somewhat. She then turned to Qin Wentian. The eyes of this friend of yours are really loathsome. Fan Lu, who was currently staring at the voluptuous figure of the beautiful lady, froze for a moment before he smiled. Bastard! The young lady blushed when she saw the look in Fan Li's eyes. Stomping her feet, she hurriedly departed. Damnable Fatty, don't cause trouble outside. Qin Wentian rolled his eyes at Fan Lu. This fellow was too much of a bastard. How could he stare at a beautiful lady like this? Boss, my eyes are there. I can't control my emotions. Fan Lu didn't seem to feel the slightest bit ashamed. After which he murmured, that beautiful lady only has a cultivation base at the 2nd level of Yuanfu. How could there be any danger? Qin Wentian completely lost his temper when he thought about how Fan Lu was able to read the cultivation base of others. It seemed like Fan Lu had done it intentionally earlier. Right now, Qin Wentian's demeanor had undergone a great transformation compared to the past. His handsome face was no longer filled with immaturity, and his long black hair casually draped over his shoulders. If one wasn't very familiar with him and hadn't seen him for half a year, they wouldn't be able to recognize him. Let's go buy a map of the moon continent. Qin Wentian walked to a shop by the roadside and purchased a map. After which he unfurled the map and studied it as he walked. His gaze instantly landed on the central location of the map. Over there was an extremely vast expanse of land, with a towering great hall that towered into the heavens as its symbol. On top of the map, 3 words were engraved, Pill Emperor Hall. Who? Qin Wentian inclined his head as he stared in the direction of the center of the city. The Pill Emperor Hall was right under his feet. It was very close to Mo Qingqing, but at the same time, it felt extremely far away. Based on his current strength, if he casually ran there, he wouldn't even be able to enter the outer perimeter of the Pill Emperor Hall. Not only that, he didn't want to attract the attention of the Hua clan. Based on his current demeanor and appearance, even if he met Hua Taishu or Hua Xiaoyan, they wouldn't be able to recognize him with a single glance. Not to mention, if he didn't go to the northern region of the Moon Continent, how could it be so easy to meet them? If he was really that unlucky, he could only ask Qing Heir to bring him away from the Moon Continent. However, he didn't want to take that step. His purpose in coming to the Moon Continent was none other than Hua Xiaoyan. Hua clan. A cold light flickered in Qin Wentian's eyes as he stared at the 4 words engraved on the northern region of the map. Hua Xiaoyan would definitely pay for his actions. Boss, where are we going? Fatty opened the map as he asked Qin Wentian. Here. Qin Wentian found a location and placed his finger on it. White Deer Institute. An expression of curiosity appeared on Fan Li's face. He was somewhat surprised that Qin Wentian would come to the Moon Continent, but he also understood Qin Wentian's personality. If Hua Xiaoyan didn't die, he wouldn't be satisfied. However, Fan Li was puzzled. Why did it seem like Qin Wentian already had a destination in mind? The White Deer Institute. This should be the first time Qin Wentian came to the Moon Continent, so how did he know what sort of place the White Deer Institute was? What sort of place is the White Deer Institute? Fan Li asked Qin Wentian. I don't know. Qin Wentian studied the route on the map as he replied straightforwardly. This time around, it was Fatty's turn to roll his eyes, speechless. You don't know? This reply was simply too good. Okay, let's go. Qin Wentian kept the map as a faint smile appeared in his eyes. Indeed, he didn't know what sort of place the White Deer Institute was. However, he knew that in the Azure Emperor token Dai had given him, there were several maps inscribed on it. One of the maps was the White Deer Institute, located in the Moon Continent of Grand Xia. This indicated that the White Deer Institute was one of the hidden powers of the Azure Emperor Palace. They had always been hidden within the Moon Continent, and after thousands of years, no one knew what the current situation was like. Maybe, other than the owner of the medallion, the members of the hidden powers of the White Deer Institute didn't even know where the other hidden powers were located. After all, too much time had passed, and they had already gotten used to their new identities. The White Deer Institute would be the first step for Qin Wentian to come into contact with the hidden powers of the Azure Emperor Palace. He had to be cautious. Chapter 231. The White Deer Institute could be considered a rather famous power in the Moon Continent. Although it couldn't be compared to the other transcendent powers, it was still quite famous. Moreover, White Deer Academy very rarely fought with other powers, so no one knew exactly how strong White Deer Academy was. Many people guessed that there might be some extremely formidable figures hidden within White Deer Academy, but they kept a very low profile. Of course, this was only a guess. White Deer Academy kept a low profile and didn't form enmity with others, so it was impossible for anyone to act against White Deer Academy for no reason. Not only that, the reputation of the White Deer Institute had always been extremely good. This power was proficient in the Tao of Divine Inscriptions, and they even had many unique divine inscriptions that were extremely powerful. When used to inscribe divine weapons, there would be unimaginable effects. However, the White Deer Institute didn't specialize in weaponsmithing, they only taught people the Tao of Divine Inscriptions. Naturally, if one wanted to learn the Tao of Divine Inscriptions in the White Deer Institute, they had to pay a certain fee, Yuan Meteor Stones. One couldn't help but say that the White Deer Institute's method of obtaining Yuan Meteor Stones was different from the rest. They relied on their own proficiency in divine inscriptions to impart knowledge to others in exchange for payment. Qin Wentian could easily find out what kind of power White Deer Academy was, and he couldn't help but sigh in his heart. As the saying goes, great hermits hide in the city. The White Deer Institute was precisely like this. Most probably, no one knew that the White Deer Institute was actually a branch of the Azure Emperor Palace. Qin Wentian and the other two arrived outside the academy. The building in front of them was not magnificent, but it was exquisite and elegant, giving people a refreshing feeling. There were people going in and out of the White Deer Academy, And there were also many people waiting outside. Hey, you're here too. Fatty Fan Li's eyes brightened. In front of them, there was a beautiful woman clad in jade green robes. It was none other than the woman they had met on the way here. The female couldn't help but suspect Fan Li's motives when she saw him frowning. Are you here to learn divine inscriptions as well? Qin Wentian asked, causing the suspicions in the girl's heart to lessen as she nodded. Just nice, my name is Fanla. Beautiful, how about you? Fatty stretched out his hand, only to be completely ignored. Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian nodded to the woman with a smile. Lung Ning, the woman replied. Is the little animal in your arms a demonic beast? So beautiful. Little Rascal's head popped out from Qin Wentian's robes as it lazily glanced at Lung Ning. Moments later, its eyes brightened as it leapt forward, directly leaping towards Lung Ning. Lung Ning stretched her hands out, only to see Little Rascal leaping into her embrace. Looking at her with a smile in his eyes, Little Rascal rubbed his head against her chest, appearing extremely comfortable. What a cute little fellow. Lung Ning's countenance was originally as cold as ice, but at this moment, a smile appeared on her face as she gently stroked Little Rascal's body. Seeing Little Rascal closing his eyes in enjoyment, Fatty Fan Li placed his hands on his hips. What a perverted dog. There are so many people here. Are there always so many people wanting to enter the White Deer Institute to study divine inscriptions? Qin Wentian surveyed the surroundings as he walked towards Lung Ning. Are you an outsider? Lung Ning looked up at Qin Wentian. I came from very far away, Qin Wentian replied. No wonder the White Deer Institute only recruits students once a month. Your luck is not bad, and the duration of the training period is also 1 month. If you have talent in the Tao of Divine Inscriptions, you will be able to continue cultivating here. If not, the White Deer Institute wouldn't waste your time. But of course, if you have extraordinary attainments in the Tao of Divine Inscriptions, you might even have a chance to become a guest elder of the White Deer Institute. Lung Ning's first impression of Qin Wentian wasn't bad, hence she patiently explained. Oh yeah, how is your attainment in the Tao of Divine Inscriptions? If your attainment is too low, there's no need to waste you on meteor stones, Lung Ning added. It wasn't that she was looking down on Qin Wentian, but rather, she was speaking from the bottom of her heart. Should be, I guess I can be considered outstanding. Qin Wentian replied in a low voice. Actually, with his attainment in the Tao of Divine Inscriptions, he could even guide others. I believe that you came from a faraway place. Lung Ning rolled her eyes at Qin Wentian. Outstanding? In terms of attainment in the Tao of Divine Inscriptions, how many people would dare to say that they were outstanding? This fellow looked extremely handsome, but it seemed like he was exaggerating. Maybe he didn't know how high the attainments in the Tao of Divine Inscriptions were. As long as you participate in the examination, you will have to pay a fee of 10 third-layer yuan meteor stones. You have to think this through, Lung Ning advised with good intentions. So expensive? Qin Wentian blushed with shame. If this was placed in the Chu country, it would already be considered a terrifying amount of wealth. Many adventurers risked their lives just to obtain this amount of wealth, but it was already extremely difficult, or even impossible. Lung Ning was even more certain of her conjecture when she saw the look of astonishment on Qin Wentian's face. This fellow really didn't know what was going on outside. As long as you have a high attainment in the Tao of Divine Inscriptions, you would be able to forge weapons. At that time, would you still be worried that you wouldn't be able to obtain yuan meteor stones? Lung Ning glared at Qin Wentian as she continued. Not only that, divine inscriptions are the foundation of the Tao of formations. A powerful divine inscriptionist would not only be able to become a grandmaster weaponsmith, they would also be able to inscribe powerful formations. I see. Qin Wentian nodded his head. Formations were something he had never heard of in the Chu country. What a small place. Is the White Deer Institute's attainment in the Tao of Divine Inscriptions very high? Qin Wentian asked again. In his heart, he really wanted to know how strong the foundations of the hidden faction of the Azure Emperor Palace were. Lung Ning was completely speechless. She rolled her eyes at Qin Wentian but didn't say anything, causing Qin Wentian to awkwardly smile on his face. Everyone. After a period of time, an old man appeared outside the White Deer Institute. Staring at the crowd, he smiled. "Follow me in." The crowd nodded their heads as they followed the old man into the institute. The White Deer Institute was actually the White Deer clan. However, they seemed to prefer the name Institute. Inside the institute, there were pavilions and pavilions, with small bridges and flowing streams. The old man brought the crowd to a stone wall. On this stone wall, there were many divine inscriptions engraved on it, giving off a sense of sharpness, causing the eyes of those who looked at it to sink into it. The power of divine inscriptions lay in the fact that they contained an indescribable power. The inscriptions interweaved together to form a mysterious diagram that could unleash a unique effect. Qin Wentian could tell with a single glance that the divine inscriptions engraved on this stone wall were all second-ranked divine inscriptions. Even if he was the one inscribing the divine inscriptions, he wouldn't be able to do much better. The person who inscribed these divine inscriptions could be considered to be an extremely good second-ranked divine inscriptionist. If the divine inscriptions had a little more grace, it would be even more perfect. What a pity! Qin Wentian murmured, his words causing Lung Ning to be stunned. She felt that these divine inscriptions were incomparably exquisite. At the very least, she wouldn't be able to replicate them. However, after hearing Qin Wentian's tone, this fellow was truly exaggerating. Yet his expression was as though it was only natural, causing everyone to be speechless. "What big words you have there." A mocking voice drifted over. Qin Wentian shifted his gaze over, only to see a young man clad in yellow robes coldly laughing at him. "This divine inscription is a work of nature. Each stroke of the divine inscription is so perfect that there are no flaws at all. Yet in your words, it's a pity." After speaking, he shifted his gaze onto Lung Ning as he laughed. "Lung Ning, is this your friend?" Lung Ning furrowed her brows. This fellow was here as well. It seemed like he was intentionally looking for trouble when he saw that Qin Wentian was together with her. Although this divine inscription was already extremely powerful, with her judgment, she could still tell that there was still a gap between perfection and perfection. This young man was naturally able to tell as well, yet he still intentionally said those words. "Yin Kong, what does this have to do with you?" Lung Ning icily retorted. "Yes, it has nothing to do with me. I'm just worried that you've met a bad friend, and you're too full of yourself." Yin Kong laughed, his words causing the gazes of the crowd to shift in their direction. Fan Lu narrowed his eyes as he stared at Yin Kong, a cultivator at the 3rd level of Yuanfu. Someone that Chu Meng could kill with a single slap, actually dared to be so arrogant? "Lung Ning, who is this idiot?" Fan Lu asked, his words causing Lung Ning to freeze. Idiot? Since he knows that this has nothing to do with him, why is he spouting nonsense? If he isn't an idiot, then what is he? Fan Lu stared at Yen Kong with traces of sympathy in his eyes, causing Yen Kong's countenance to stiffen as he stared at Fan Lu with a cold glint in his eyes. Lung Ning laughed lightly. She discovered that this fatty didn't seem so loathsome after all. "Lung Ning, you are so beautiful." A radiant smile appeared on Fan Li's face when he saw Lung Ning's beautiful eyes. Glancing at her slender figure, he couldn't help but smile back. Many in the crowd turned their gazes over, but upon hearing Fan Li's words, they couldn't help but perspire in shame. This fellow, how could he be so direct when trying to woo a girl? Qin Wentian turned and walked away, leaving aside the fact that he knew this shameless fellow. Idiot. Yin Kong coldly glanced at Fan Lu before turning to Lung Ning. "Lung Ning, your eyesight isn't bad at all." Lung Ning didn't expect Fan Li's words to be so mushy. She couldn't help but to be speechless. "Everyone quiet down." At this moment the old man spoke again, causing the crowd to quieten down. Everyone turned their gazes in his direction, only to see a young lady appearing beside the old man. This young lady was clad in a tight-fitting black robe that perfectly accentuated her exquisite figure. Her fiery hot figure wasn't the least bit inferior to Lung Ning's, and was even more voluptuous. Her neck was as white as a swan, causing the gazes of the onlookers to involuntarily shift downwards. Such a radiant figure, yet she had an incomparably delicate countenance that gave off an intense visual impact. Fan Li's eyes shone with a bright light. He loved the moon continent too much. Beauties were as common as the clouds, and all of them were top-tier beauties. Was Fatty's spring finally here? By Lu Yi, the most powerful divine inscriptionist of the younger generation in the White Deer Institute. She's able to inscribe third-rank divine inscriptions, and the inscriptions she inscribed are all extremely exquisite. There are countless suitors chasing after her. Don't think too much about it, Lung Ning explained in a low voice. Qin Wentian contemplated Bai Lui. She was indeed an extremely charming woman, able to inscribe third-rank divine inscriptions with a single glance. What's even rarer was the fact that she could inscribe third-rank divine inscriptions at such a young age. Qin Wentian himself was proficient in divine inscriptions, but he knew how difficult it was to inscribe third-rank divine inscriptions. Being able to inscribe third-rank divine inscriptions is indeed not bad. Qin Wentian lightly commented, not knowing that Lung Ning was completely speechless when she looked at him. Being able to inscribe third-rank divine inscriptions was only not bad? Wasn't that already demon level? How could this fellow be so arrogant? Yet he didn't seem to feel the slightest bit ashamed, as though his words were only natural. Chapter 232. Bai Lui surveyed the crowd before her before continuing. Later on, all of you choose one of the divine inscriptions inscribed on the stone rampart, and pass it to me. If your performance is good, I will take on the role of teacher for this batch of students. The eyes of the crowd brightened when they heard Bai Luyi's words. No one dared to think that Bai Lui was inexperienced. As the strongest divine inscriptionist of the younger generation in the White Deer Academy, Bai Luyi's attainments in the Tao of divine inscriptions were extremely terrifying. Not only that, she was also a great beauty. The crowd was naturally more than willing to accept her, especially the young males. If he could make use of this opportunity to nurture his relationship with Bai Lui. These fellows are really indulging in fantasy. Lung Ning swept a glance at the gazes of the crowd, including Fan Le. The White Deer Institute once wanted to find an outstanding young man for Bai Lui, but Bai Lui said that her man's attainments in the Tao of divine inscriptions were higher than hers. Hence, the White Deer Institute immediately gave up on the idea. Is her attainment in divine inscriptions really that high? Qin Wentian asked in astonishment. The students of the White Deer Academy are proficient in all kinds of divine inscriptions, and in addition to the fact that she has a forging-type astral soul, how could her talent in divine inscriptions not be high? Don't tell me you also have designs on her? Lung Ning contemplated Qin Wentian. Noticing Lung Ning's unfriendly gaze, Qin Wentian couldn't help but feel a little depressed. Not only did he have no interest in Bai Lui, but even if he did, there was no need for Lung Ning to look at him in such a manner. I already have someone in my heart. Qin Wentian shook his head and smiled. Only then did Lung Ning feel relieved. The woman in his heart is extremely beautiful. The #1 beauty in the Pill Emperor Hall. Fatty Fan Lu interjected. His expression froze as he stared at Fan Le. Why don't you say that the person he's in love with is Mo Qingcheng? How did you know? This time around it was Fan Le who was stunned. He had only casually mentioned it, but who would have thought that Lung Ning would actually be able to guess it? Seeing how serious Fan Le was looking at her, Lung Ning held her breath and spat out a single word, scram. These guys were too shameless. Are you acquainted with Mo Qingcheng? Qin Wentian asked in a low voice, his heart pounding. Qingcheng, was she cultivating in that towering great hall? Lung Ning stared at Qin Wentian with a strange expression on her face. After which she continued. Before this, the daughter of the Pill Emperor Luo He accepted a disciple. Many major powers personally went over to congratulate her, and this matter shook the entire moon continent. After which, the name of this female disciple was rumored to be Mo Qingcheng. She has a countenance so beautiful that it could topple empires. Right now, who in the moon continent doesn't know of her? However, you guys are really shameless enough to say such words. Qin Wentian drew in a deep breath as a bitter smile appeared on his face. Seems like he really had to hurry up and gain control over the hidden faction of the Azure faction. If not, he wouldn't even have the qualifications to see Qingcheng. Even a passerby would feel that the relationship between him and Qingcheng was like a fool's dream. However, the White Deer Institute was a power that had been hidden for thousands of years. Qin Wentian had no understanding of it at all. He could only take things one step at a time, infiltrating the core of the White Deer Institute first. He didn't know what attitude they had towards the Azure Emperor Palace. Okay, come over here and inscribe the divine inscriptions on the stone monument over here. At this moment, the old man beside Bai Lui spoke, leading the crowd forward. Over there were many stone monuments with densely packed divine inscriptions engraved on them. These should have been inscribed by the previous examinees. Fan Lo and Chu Meng stood to the left and right of Qin Wentian, scratching their heads. They didn't understand divine inscriptions at all. Qin Wentian had long since chosen the divine inscription he wanted to inscribe. Astral energy gushed forth from his body as resplendent astral light appeared on his fingertips. Inscribing runic lines of divine inscriptions on the stone monument, he completed them in one breath. Not long after, a flying sword appeared on the stone monument. Done, Miss Bai Lu, please take a look. At this moment, a voice drifted over. The person who spoke was none other than Yan Kong. He and Qin Wentian had finished inscribing at almost the same time. The gazes of the crowd turned to the stone monument in front of them, only to see an eagle soaring in the skies, flapping its wings as it soared into the skies. An aura gushed forth from the stone monument, causing the crowd to involuntarily sigh in admiration. The standard of this divine inscription could even be compared to the original divine inscriptions on the stone monument. As expected of someone from the Yan clan, their talent in the Tao of divine inscriptions is exceedingly high. Many mused. The Yan clan was extremely famous in this generation. Lung Ning's countenance was extremely unsightly. Not long after, she also inscribed a divine inscription. Although it wasn't bad, there was still a gap between her and Yan Kong. She could only barely inscribe a second-level divine inscription. She couldn't help but feel a tinge of sadness in her heart as she stared at her own divine inscription in a daze. Since you're done, let's return, the old man indifferently stated, as the crowd dispersed. Did you inscribe a second-level divine inscription? Lung Ning absent-mindedly asked as she turned her head to Qin Wentian. She even turned her head back to glance at Qin Wentian. It seemed that Qin Wentian had just inscribed a sword. What a simple divine inscription. MHM. Qin Wentian lightly nodded his head. He should be able to get first place. Fan Lo was extremely clear about Qin Wentian's attainments in the Tao of divine inscriptions. For someone who could inscribe third-level divine inscriptions, a second-level divine inscription wouldn't be a problem at all. The old man and Bai Lu remained in front of the stone monuments, staring at the divine inscriptions on them. The old man smiled as he observed the divine inscriptions Yan Kong was inscribing. Yan Kong's strength is truly impressive. If he were to study in the White Deer Academy for a period of time, his attainments in the Tao of divine inscriptions would be even higher. There are many geniuses in this batch, but Yan Kong is the most impressive. You're wrong. At this moment, Bai Lui stood in front of a stone monument as she interjected. The old man's countenance faltered as he stared at the stone monument. The inscription of a sword was extremely simple, and although it exuded an aura of sharpness, it was, after all, a simple divine inscription. Bai Lui stretched out her hands as astral energy gushed forth, flowing along the divine inscription. Puchi. A terrifyingly sharp aura gushed forth, accompanied by the whistling of a sword intent. A moment later, the stone monument split apart, revealing a sword scar on its surface. Returning to one's natural state. This person's attainments in the Tao of divine inscriptions are at the grand completion of the second level. Bai Lu Yi's eyes flickered as she asked the old man. Who was the one who inscribed that? I don't know. I've never seen that young man before. Bai Lu Yi, are you going to be a teacher for this batch of students? The old man asked. I'll do it. Bai Lu Yi nodded her head. After you pay the Yuan meteor stones, bring them to the academy. Right. The old man nodded his head as he made the necessary arrangements. Within the academy, there were many stone chairs and tables. In front of them, there was a stone wall inscribed with various types of divine inscriptions. Qin Wentian sat beside Lung Ning, while Fan Lo and Chu Meng sat behind them. Bai Lui walked to the stone wall, staring at the crowd as she stated, "Although there are a few among you who don't know anything about divine inscriptions, but since you're willing to waste your time here, I won't say anything more. Luckily, there's one person whose attainments in the Tao of divine inscriptions have reached the pinnacle of the second level. I have high hopes for him." Chu Mang scratched his head as an expression of shame appeared on his face. Beside him, Fan Le didn't know what shame was. He stared intently at Bai Lui. The more he stared at her, the more beautiful she seemed. The gazes of the crowd shifted onto Yan Kong. He should be the person whom Bai Lui had high hopes for. Feeling the gazes of the crowd, Yan Kong's lips curled up in a faint smile. He stood out like a crane among chickens, exuding a sense of pride. Lung Ning, on the other hand, felt a sense of defeat, as her countenance turned cold. Divine inscriptions are one of the most miraculous energies in the world. Divine inscriptions can be used to forge weapons, inscribe formations, and can even be used in combat. The Tao of divine inscriptions contains the Tao of heaven and earth, allowing one to borrow the power of heaven and earth to unleash boundless might. Bai Lui explained to the crowd, "Can divine inscriptions be as powerful as one's strength? No matter how high your Tao of divine inscriptions is, I'm still stronger than you. Can't I deal with you all the same?" Fan Le asked. Bai Lui glanced at him as she replied, "Look at the divine inscription you inscribed. You drew a little white puppy, it's not bad." Ha! Momentarily, the crowd erupted into laughter. Luckily, Fan Li's skin was thick, as though nothing had happened. "Have you heard of a Yuanfu cultivator killing a heavenly dipper sovereign?" Bai Lui asked. "That's impossible, right?" "Of course it's impossible for an ordinary Wuxia. But for powerful divine inscriptionists, they can borrow the power of heaven and earth to achieve such a feat in our moon continent. There's a legendary Grandmaster divine inscriptionist who killed a heavenly dipper sovereign with a cultivation base at the Yuanfu realm. Not only that, this battle was witnessed by many, so feel free to ask around." Bai Lui faintly explained, causing the countenances of the crowd to turn solemn. Evidently, they all knew of this matter. Is he really that powerful? Fan Li's lips twitched. Lung Ning rolled her eyes. This fellow didn't even know how powerful the White Deer Institute was. The Tao of Divine Inscriptions of the White Deer Institute was extremely famous in the entire moon continent. Divine inscriptions for weapons, divine inscriptions for formations, divine inscriptions for combat, they were all proficient in all of these fields. Bai Lui didn't look at Fan Le as she continued her lecture. Qin Wentian quietly listened. Although he had a high level of talent in the Tao of Divine Inscriptions, his knowledge regarding divine inscriptions was extremely limited. Divine inscriptions were undoubtedly the key for him to enter the White Deer Institute. This lecture lasted for 4 hours, and Qin Wentian felt that he had benefited greatly from it. After which, they departed from the White Deer Institute. "How do you feel?" Lung Ning asked Qin Wentian. "Not bad. Bai Luyi's attainments in the Tao of Divine Inscriptions are not bad, and she was able to give me some inspiration." Qin Wentian laughed. Lung Ning rolled her eyes again. No matter how she listened to Qin Wentian's words, she couldn't help but feel that Qin Wentian's tone was extremely arrogant. Maybe this was just his personality. Actually, Qin Wentian's words were based on his own attainments in the Tao of Divine Inscriptions. However, Lung Ning had always felt that Qin Wentian's attainments in the Tao of Divine Inscriptions were ordinary, and hence, she naturally felt that his words were too arrogant. "Miss Lung, we've just arrived here, and we don't have a place to stay. Can we stay at your place for a few days?" Fan Le asked as he walked towards Lung Ning. Qin Wentian was speechless upon hearing Fan Li's words. He then replied, "We'll look for an inn to stay in. Little rascal, come over here." However, Little Rascal in Lung Ning's embrace actually rubbed his head against Lung Ning's chest, as though he was extremely unwilling to do so. This caused Qin Wentian to be speechless. Little Rascal was just as lecherous as Fan Le. "Forget it, my house isn't too far away anyway, and there are plenty of rooms available. You guys can stay here for a few days." Lung Ning was extremely fond of Little Rascal. Although these people were arrogant, they didn't seem to be bad people. Qin Wentian was also quite polite. Maybe it was because he wanted to save face that he liked to put on an unfathomable front. Chapter 233. Qin Wentian didn't expect Leng Ning to agree. It seemed that although this beauty looked cold, her heart was actually quite pure. If not, she wouldn't have agreed to let strangers stay in her house. After all, this was the first day they met. Hee beauty Leng Ning, you better take note of your status. It wouldn't be good if my uncle found out about this. A voice drifted over. Yan Kong walked over and mocked Leng Ning. Leng Ning's countenance turned extremely unsightly as she spat out a single word. Scram. Humph, Leng Ning, you'd better be more polite to me. Yan Kong coldly laughed as he flicked his sleeves and left. There were a few people following behind him, and one of them laughed. This lass from the Leng clan is truly beautiful. What a pity. But Yan Kong, you are truly blessed. Even Bai Lu Yi praised you for having a cultivation base at the peak of the second ranked. Maybe you might have a chance. Yan Kong's countenance brightened as he turned his head to glance at Leng Ning. This lass was very beautiful, but sadly, she wasn't his. However, when he thought of Bai Lu Yi's alluring figure and pure countenance, his heart couldn't help but palpitate with eagerness. As long as he performed well this month, he could join the White Deer Institute as a guest elder and interact with Bai Lu Yi frequently. Thinking of this, Yan Kong left with an arrogant expression on his face. Let's go. Leng Ning spoke in a low voice. It was unknown if it was because of Yan Kong's words, but her countenance was as cold as ice, as though she had something on her mind. She even ignored Fan Li's attempts to disturb her, causing Qin Wentian to guess that Leng Ning must have met with some trouble. The Leng clan could be considered a major clan in this region, much larger compared to the Mo clan in Chu. Any clan in the Moon continent would be incomparable to the Chu country. After walking for a while, two silhouettes appeared in front of them. It was a young man and a young woman. Over here. Leng Ning intentionally avoided them, but the young woman had already called out with a smile. Leng Ning, why are you leaving the moment you see me? Leng Lin, what's the matter? Leng Ning asked with a frown. I heard you went to the White Deer Institute to study divine inscriptions. Why do you have to work so hard? When the time comes, you can just marry him. At that time, your status will also rise. Leng Lin's tone seemed a little strange. Let's go. Leng Ning didn't want to bother with Leng Lin, as she whispered to Qin Wentian and the rest behind her. You actually brought a few men back. You have to be careful of your image. Could it be that you want to learn from me and find someone reliable? As Leng Lin spoke, she leaned on the body of the young man beside her. The young man watched on calmly with a smile on his face, contemplating Leng Ning and the others. Leng Ning didn't intend to waste any more time, and continued walking forwards. Qin Wentian walked to the side of Leng Ning, and upon seeing the baleful look on her face, he couldn't help but ask in a low voice, the clan arranged a marriage for you, are you not willing? Qin clan. Leng Ning didn't even bother to ask. Glances Leng Ning's words. Here. Ningri. It seemed like this matter was Leng Ning's Achilles heel. As the young miss of the Leng clan, Leng Ning had her own private courtyard. There were many rooms in this courtyard. She pointed to a room and said to Qin Wentian, you stay in this room, he'll stay in that room, and that fatty will stay in the room furthest to the side. Why am I staying in the room furthest to the side? Fan Lu asked with a bitter expression. I'm worried about you. Leng Ning coldly replied, causing Fan Li's countenance to crumble. Nonsense, what nonsense? At this moment, an enraged voice drifted over, followed by the sound of footsteps. A middle-aged man walked over, sweeping a glance at Qin Wentian and the rest as he coldly asked, who are they? A friend I met in the White Deer Institute. Leng Ning's countenance was as cold as ever. They studied divine inscriptions together with you? What a joke. Do you think you can solve this problem by finding a few random men? Are you trying to anger the Yan clan? The middle-aged man angrily berated. Let them leave. You don't need to interfere in my matters. Leng Ning bluntly stated. I'm your father. The middle-aged man raged. So you still remember that you're my father? Leng Ning's eyes flickered with coldness. How infuriating. Why are you so immature? I'm doing this for your own good. That's a third-ranked grandmaster we're talking about. The middle-aged man pointed at Leng Ning. Scram. Leng Ning roared. You. The silhouette of the middle-aged man flickered as he lifted his palm, preparing to strike out. However, Lung Ning merely stared coldly at him. "You're on your own now." The middle-aged man didn't continue his attack. He flicked his sleeves and left. Qin Wentian and the rest were all dumbfounded. Things seemed to be a little complicated, but as outsiders, it wasn't their place to comment on it. After Lung Ning returned to her room, Qin Wentian and the rest also returned to their own rooms to rest. In his room, Qin Wentian sat cross-legged as he examined his yuanfu. His 3 yuanfu were akin to pools of water, filled with astral energy, and there were even traces of divine energy within. The reason why Qin Wentian's mastery of divine inscriptions was so high was because he was constantly using divine inscriptions to condense divine energy. Currently, to Qin Wentian, he only needed a short amount of time to condense a second-ranked divine inscription. Cultivating in the yuanfu realm is truly difficult. Especially for me, I still need to condense 3 yuanfu. Qin Wentian was extremely depressed. Previously, his cultivation speed was extremely fast, but now that he stepped into yuanfu, he was only at the 2nd level of yuanfu. However, the amount of astral energy contained in his yuanfu was much greater compared to others. The door opened, and Little Rascal popped its head in, after which, Qin Wentian heard a squeaking sound in his mind, as though Little Rascal wanted to say something to him. After which, Qin Wentian saw Little Rascal turning around, as though it was hinting for him to leave. Qin Wentian felt that something was amiss, but he still followed Little Rascal out. Little Rascal turned back to look at him, before running towards Lung Ning's room. "You want me to go in?" Qin Wentian asked in a low voice, as Little Rascal nodded its head. Qin Wentian smiled bitterly. He didn't know what Little Rascal was trying to say, but he still went to Lung Ning's room. The door wasn't closed, and he could see Lung Ning sitting there, crying her eyes out. This caused Qin Wentian to be stunned. This cold beauty was actually secretly wiping away her tears. Upon seeing Qin Wentian walking over, Lung Ning hurriedly turned her head away as she coldly asked, "What are you doing in here?" Qin Wentian smiled bitterly as he walked towards Lung Ning. He sat down at the tea table opposite of Lung Ning as he asked in a low voice, "Is there something that you can't get over? Why must you do this?" Lung Ning stared at Qin Wentian, and upon seeing his clear eyes, she couldn't help but to think that this fellow was indeed handsome, just a little too exaggerated. "That person earlier was my father. He and his clan arranged a marriage for me, to marry Yan Kong's uncle, the Yan Kong I met back in the White Deer Institute. His uncle is a man in his 70s or 80s, but that's still fine. Most people in their 70s or 80s would still look like middle-aged men due to their cultivation, but his uncle has an extremely ugly appearance. What's even more ridiculous is that he has already married a few wives, and all of them have gone mad. Yes, mad, they were abused to the point of insanity. Yan Kong's uncle is a sadist, a madman, and my father wanted me to marry him." Lung Ning started crying again, her eyes red. "What's even more ridiculous is that they even said that it was for my own good. Isn't it because that old ghost is a 3rd-ranked divine inscriptionist, and can help them? Hence, they wanted to sacrifice me, pushing me into the hands of the devil." Qin Wentian was stunned speechless when he heard Lung Ning's words. Could the great clans really be so cruel? For the sake of their own selfish desires, they would even sacrifice their own women? This was too much. Qingqing was born in the Mo clan, but Mo Tianlin doted on her a lot. His father, Qin Chuan, also had deep feelings for her. "Is there no other way?" Qin Wentian asked in a low voice. "There is. We need to find someone with outstanding talent. That Lung Lin from before, she's my cousin." Initially, the clan chose her, but she found a man, the one you saw earlier, a peak tier 2nd-ranked divine inscriptionist with a cultivation base at the 3rd level of yuanfu. Lung Lin then said that she wanted me to marry him. Hence, the clan chose me. Hee how laughable. At this moment, Lung Ning was extremely weak. She lay on the chair, staring at Qin Wentian as a thought flashed through her mind. Wasn't this fellow also a divine inscriptionist? But in the next moment, her countenance darkened. How could she have such a thought? Although this fellow was handsome, he was actually an arrogant and boastful fellow. Second-rank divine inscriptionist? Seems like the requirements of your clan aren't too high. Qin Wentian laughed. Lung Ning was speechless when she heard Qin Wentian's words. Could it be that you are a peak-tier second-rank divine inscriptionist and are prepared to marry me? If that's the case, I'm really willing to marry you. Qin Wentian's face was filled with black lines. This was really troublesome. It was impossible for him to marry Lung Ning. Forget it. How could I say such an idiotic thing? You. Lung Ning shook her head as she stared at Qin Wentian. But you are also quite adorable. The divine inscriptions you inscribed during the examination are the simplest. Yet your tone is so arrogant. I really don't know what you are thinking. After speaking, Lung Ning started laughing. Qin Wentian couldn't help but sigh in his heart when he saw how beautiful Lung Ning was when she laughed. Actually, you look even better when you laugh. Why must you be so cold? Just let nature take its course. Maybe when the time comes, there will be a solution. Qin Wentian persuaded. Fine, I'll laugh. Lung Ning's mood lightened up after she spoke. She glared at Qin Wentian with hidden bitterness, exuding an aura of femininity. Actually, I'm a third-rank divine inscriptionist. Qin Wentian spoke to Lung Ning. He didn't know if he could help her or not. Lung Ning froze for a moment before giggling. I know, the person in your heart is Mo Qingqing from the Pill Emperor Hall. The two of you are in love with each other. This time around, you came to the moon continent to look for Mo Qingqing, right? MHM. Qin Wentian seriously nodded his head. Lung Ning was completely speechless. Good. Thank you for listening to me. You should leave now, this is my room. Qin Wentian smiled bitterly. Was he so untrustworthy? In any case, he still had to stay here for a period of time. He might as well see if he could help this pitiful lass. As for marrying her, Qin Wentian had no such thoughts. After Qin Wentian left, Lung Ning shook her head and whispered, What a braggart! If you were a third-rank divine inscriptionist, I would even be willing to be your concubine. Qin Wentian's perception was extremely sharp. Upon hearing Lung Ning's words, he almost fell to the ground. His face was filled with black lines. Could he still reveal his talent as a third-rank divine inscriptionist in the future? Chapter 234. The night was as tranquil as still water. Qin Wentian was quietly cultivating in his room. Strands of astral light cascaded down from the heavens, illuminating the roof of Qin Wentian's room. Lung Ning sat on a rattan chair in the middle of the courtyard. The two ends of the chair were dangling from a tree on both sides, gently swaying in the wind. When she was young, her mother would often tease her like this. Sadly, her mother had passed away, and her father had no status in the clan. Thinking of this, Lung Ning lightly sighed, as a bitter smile appeared on her face. Lifting her head, she gazed in the direction of Qin Wentian's room. From such a close distance, she could feel that the astral light in his room was much denser. What a braggart! How interesting! Lung Ning couldn't help but laugh at the thought of Qin Wentian's shamelessness. This person's skin was so thick that she was speechless. She had said that they were in love. Yet he still had the cheek to nod his head? When the sun rose, Qin Wentian walked out of his room. Upon seeing Lung Ning sleeping on the rattan chair, he couldn't help but walk up and drape his cloak over her. Lung Ning's eyelashes fluttered as she opened her eyes. Upon seeing Qin Wentian, she involuntarily smiled. Good morning, Grandmaster Divine Inscriptionist. Qin Wentian perspired. Morning. The sun is about to rise, I'll go prepare some food. I'm not used to not eating in the morning. Lung Ning stood up from the rattan chair and went to prepare some snacks. Although it was fine for cultivators at the Yuanfu realm to not eat or drink, humans still love to use food as a supplement to their lives, to satisfy their cravings. Not bad. Qin Wentian smiled as he tasted the snacks. Thank you, Grandmaster, for your praise. Shouldn't we wake those two fellows up and head to the White Deer Institute? Lung Ning mischievously asked. The two of them aren't interested in divine inscriptions. It doesn't matter if they don't go or not. Let's go first. Qin Wentian spoke in a low voice. If Fan Lu and Chu Meng were willing to cultivate here, it wouldn't be a waste of time. That's fine too. Lung Ning nodded her head, and the two of them headed towards the White Deer Institute. However, before he could enter the academy, Qin Wentian was blocked by someone. Today, Yan Kong was clad in a blue robe, and there were a few people following behind him, blocking the path of Qin Wentian and Lung Ning. Their countenances were filled with hostility. "I heard that you stayed in her courtyard yesterday?" Yan Kong stared at Qin Wentian. His narrowed eyes seemed to gleam with the sharpness of a blade, causing people to feel extremely uncomfortable. "Yan Kong, I don't need you to interfere in my matters." Lung Ning furrowed her brows as she berated. "You will marry into my Yan family sooner or later. You better be careful." Yan Kong coldly stared at Lung Ning before turning to Qin Wentian. "It's fine if you like women, but there are some women you can't touch. If not, you won't even know how you died. Let me give you a piece of advice: get the hell out of the Lung clan as soon as possible." After speaking, Yan Kong turned and stepped into the White Deer Institute. The people beside him laughed as they watched Qin Wentian and Lung Ning, with hints of mockery in their eyes. After which, they followed after Yan Kong. "I'm sorry I've implicated you." Lung Ning apologized. "I was the one who took the initiative to stay at your residence. What are you apologizing for?" Qin Wentian casually shrugged his shoulders. Fan Le had told him before that Yan Kong's cultivation base was at the 3rd level of Yuanfu, and was a peak-tier 2nd-ranked divine inscriptionist. He wouldn't pose any threat to Qin Wentian. Only the Yan clan might be a little troublesome, but if Yan Kong really wanted to deal with him, Qin Wentian wouldn't mind teaching him a lesson. "Why don't you move out today?" Lung Ning shook her head as she stared at Qin Wentian. "It's fine, there's no need to bother with him." Qin Wentian didn't mind as he stepped into the White Deer Institute. Lung Ning shook her head as she stared at Qin Wentian's back view. This fellow was too stubborn. When Yan Kong was talking to him, why didn't he have any reaction at all? And now he was acting so stubbornly in front of her. Qin Wentian's studies in the White Deer Institute were very peaceful. The knowledge Bai Lui had imparted to him had indeed opened a new door for him in the Tao of Divine Inscriptions. In the past, he only knew that divine inscriptions could be used to forge weapons and cast divine energy. But now he understood that the Tao of Divine Inscriptions was extremely broad and profound. According to the teachings of the White Deer Institute, the Tao of Divine Inscriptions could be divided into 4 categories: Divine Inscriptions Forging, Divine Inscriptions Inscribing, Divine Inscriptions Combat, and Divine Inscriptions Puppet Refinement. Forging weapons with divine inscriptions, as the name implied, was to forge divine weapons. Inscribing formations with divine inscriptions was to inscribe formations. As for combat with divine inscriptions, it was something that Qin Wentian had comprehended in the past. It was just that his comprehension of divine inscriptions was very shallow. As for puppet refinement with divine inscriptions, it was to use the power of divine inscriptions to forge puppets. Bai Lui didn't explain the Tao of puppets in detail, but Qin Wentian couldn't help but feel a faint sense of excitement in his heart. He had once cultivated the Tao of Divine Inscriptions, using divine inscriptions to condense innate techniques that could be unleashed through the arterial pathways of the body. Similarly, using divine inscriptions to inscribe divine energy could also be unleashed through the arterial pathways of the body. Hence, he had always had a bold idea. Could it be that the structure of the human body, as well as the meridians of the human body, were themselves a type of unique divine inscriptions? He could imagine that the human body was made up of countless divine runes. If that was the case, the Tao of puppets would be completely understandable. Other than lecturing on the basics of divine inscriptions, Bai Lui would also personally teach the students how to research, inscribe, and destroy divine inscriptions. Unknowingly, a month's time was almost up. To someone like Fan Le, this was indeed a waste of time and yuan meteor stones. But to Qin Wentian, this investment was truly worth it. In front of the stone rampart of the academy, Bai Lui no longer continued her lecture. She glanced at the students before her. Her countenance was still as calm as ever, giving off a feeling of cold. Yet that pure and innocent countenance of hers was extremely endearing. "Okay, tomorrow will be the last day for you all to learn from me. Tomorrow, I will not be teaching you all in the academy. Instead, I'm preparing to head to the Hell Arena in the Eastern City to personally spectate the battles between divine inscriptions, Bai Lui stated, causing the pupils of many to narrow. Hell Arena? What kind of place is the Hell Arena? Qin Wentian asked in a low voice to Lung Ning, who was beside him. Lung Ning's countenance turned solemn. When she thought of that terrifying place, she felt her scalp going numb. This cold beauty Bai Lui was truly audacious. She actually wanted to head to the Hell Arena. The craziest place in the Moon continent is both heaven and hell. It can also be called the largest gambling den. The people there gamble with their lives, Lung Ning stated in a low voice. Lung Ning spoke in a low voice, her words causing Qin Wentian to cast a few glances at Bai Lui. This cold beauty was truly charismatic, as expected of a genius from the White Deer Institute. Also, after tomorrow, I intend to choose one of you to continue studying the Tao of Divine Inscriptions with me, Bai Lui stated in a low voice. Momentarily, expressions of excitement appeared on the faces of many, who would be so lucky to be able to study the Tao of Divine Inscriptions with Bai Lui. The gazes of many involuntarily turned to Yan Kong. If Bai Lui had to choose one person, she would definitely choose the one with the strongest inscriptions. In that case, Yan Kong would undoubtedly be chosen. However, Qin Wentian didn't think so. He saw Bai Lui glancing at him, and although it was just a glance, Qin Wentian's heart was as clear as a mirror. It was impossible for Bai Lui to not understand the divine inscriptions he had inscribed that day. Not only that, during the past month of study, he had also used various methods to hint at his divine inscriptions ability in front of Bai Lui. This way, it wouldn't be too abrupt, and would also allow Bai Lui to remember him. And now the opportunity had finally arrived. Lung Ning, I would like to invite Bai Lui for a meal later. You guys can return first, Qin Wentian whispered to Lung Ning, causing her to freeze. She glared at Qin Wentian. Bai Lui rarely interacts with men. A few days ago, Yan Kong also invited her, but she rejected him. This fellow was still as arrogant as ever. He hadn't changed at all. I know. Qin Wentian nodded his head, as though he didn't care at all. Lung Ning was speechless, but she didn't say anything more. Let him hit the wall himself. Yan Kong, who was in front, turned his head and glanced at Qin Wentian. This fellow really didn't listen to advice. He still hadn't moved out of the Lung clan. And now he even wanted to invite Bai Lui for a meal? What a joke. All right, let's call it a day. Everyone disperse, Bai Lui stated. Teacher Bai Lu, Qin Wentian called out, seeing that Bai Lui was about to depart. Bai Lui halted her steps upon seeing Qin Wentian. She had a deep impression of Qin Wentian since the first time he took the divine inscription examination. In the following month, he was extremely serious, and would ask questions whenever he didn't understand something. Some of his questions sounded like idiocy, but he didn't mind, even if he would be laughed at by others. Bai Lui felt that it was strange why Qin Wentian would ask such basic questions. This fellow would occasionally give her hints, but she could sense that Qin Wentian's attainments in the Tao of Divine Inscriptions weren't as simple as a second-ranked divine inscriptionist. This was also the reason why she wanted to recruit someone to continue learning under her. Is there anything I can help you with? Bai Lui asked, looking at Qin Wentian. I would like to invite Teacher Bai Lu for a meal to discuss some questions regarding the Tao of Divine Inscriptions. I wonder if Teacher Bai Lu is free? Qin Wentian smiled as he walked towards Bai Lui. SHHH. The entire academy was filled with boos. Qin Wentian's words instantly caused a commotion. Was this fellow crazy? Was he dreaming? He actually wanted to invite their goddess to a meal? What a fool. They were already waiting to see Qin Wentian make a fool of himself. Back then, even Yan Kong was mercilessly rejected by Qin Wentian. Yan Kong stared at Qin Wentian, feeling a little ridiculous. Shifting his gaze to Lung Ning, he laughed in a low voice. This friend of yours, is there a problem here? As Yan Kong spoke, he pointed to his head, causing the people around him to burst out laughing. Lung Ning's countenance was unsightly, but since Qin Wentian wanted to do this, there was nothing she could do. Fine. At this moment, a crisp sound rang out, causing the smile on Yan Kong's face to freeze. His finger was still pointing to his head, yet he couldn't move it no matter how hard he tried. Chapter 235. Along with this crisp sound, the entire academy fell silent in an instant. The owner of the voice was undoubtedly Bai Lui. Not only did she not reject, she even accepted Qin Wentian's invitation without hesitation. Yan Kong's finger was still pointing at his head, while Lung Ning had an extremely interesting expression on her face, as though she had been possessed. But after a moment of shock, she smiled at Yan Kong. Just because you can't do it, doesn't mean others can't. Yan Kong, don't overestimate yourself too much. You're just a joke. Evidently, Lung Ning was referring to the matter of Yan Kong's invitation to Bai Lui being rejected. At that time, Yan Kong didn't feel that it was too shameful, as everyone felt that it was only natural. After all, how could it be so easy to invite the cold and lofty Bai Lui? But now that Qin Wentian had succeeded, it undoubtedly caused Yan Kong to be embarrassed. Shifting his gaze over, Yan Kong stared at Bai Lui and Qin Wentian as his countenance flickered with uncertainty. Maybe because today was the last day Bai Lui would be teaching them, Bai Lui decided to give him some face. If he asked for it today, he would definitely do it. After all, he was the strongest inscriptionist here. Thinking of this, Yan Kong flashed a smile that he thought was handsome as he spoke. Teacher Bai Lu, I also have some questions regarding divine inscriptions that I wish to consult you on. Bai Lui was just about to leave with Qin Wentian when she heard Yan Kong's words. She couldn't help but to feel that it was ridiculous. What did this person treat her as? Was he trying to show off? I've already promised him. Bai Lui politely rejected, not wanting to make things too difficult for Yan Kong. Then I can invite you for dinner. Yan Kong smiled warmly, causing many to turn their gazes over. Bai Lui furrowed her brows. This person really didn't know when to stop. I'm not free. Bai Lui coldly replied, before walking out of the academy, leaving behind a dumbfounded Yan Kong. His countenance alternated between shades of green and white as he noticed the gazes of the crowd on him. This is called asking for a beating. Lung Ning giggled. Looking at the sullen expression on Yan Kong's face, she couldn't help but feel delighted. She discovered that Qin Wentian was actually quite adorable. Yan Kong stared at the back of Qin Wentian, his lips as sharp as a blade, flickering with killing intent. Since he didn't dare to do anything to Bai Lui, he could only vent his anger on Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian couldn't be bothered with Yan Kong's thoughts. Together with Bai Lui, they exited the White Deer Institute. Bai Lui's beautiful eyes stared at him as she asked, "Where are we going?" "I don't know the place. Why don't you take me there?" Qin Wentian awkwardly replied. Bai Lui's beautiful eyes flickered as she stared at him. "Is this how you treat us?" I entered the White Deer Institute on the first day I arrived in the Moon Continent. Since then, I've been staying with the Lung clan. Qin Wentian said, a little embarrassed. All right then, come with me, Bai Lui straightforwardly replied. Qin Wentian smiled as he followed after her. However, not long after, Qin Wentian began to cry. Bai Lui brought him to an inn named Immortal Aroma Lodge. The environment of this inn was extremely elegant, especially so for the location Bai Lui had chosen. Behind a folding screen, the two of them could be seen leaning against the railing, gazing down at the lake below. A gentle breeze blew past, and there were only the two of them in the room. The wine and dishes on the table were rich and mellow, while the aroma of meat assailed the nostrils. The dishes were actually cooked using special ingredients mixed with the meat of precious demonic beasts. The price of this table was equivalent to the price Qin Wentian had to pay for a month's worth of divine inscriptions. Bai Lui couldn't help but smile when she saw Qin Wentian staring at her unblinkingly. Her smile was akin to the blooming of a snow lotus on an iceberg, exuding a wondrous feeling. The Immortal Aroma Lodge is the most famous inn in the Moon Continent, and we have many branches. The dishes here are all specially made, and are extremely beneficial to Wuxia's health. It's just that the price is a little too high. Why? You asked me to bring you here. Are you unwilling to part with the price? Bai Lui's countenance was pure and innocent, and her smile was extremely beautiful. However, when Bai Lui saw that Qin Wentian was still staring at her, she couldn't help but feel uneasy. This fellow, didn't he just tease her a little? Why must he be so petty? That smile of yours is worth it. Qin Wentian laughed, causing Bai Luyi to freeze. She glared at Qin Wentian before reverting back to her usual cold self. She didn't expect that she would be teased by him instead. Let's call it even. Qin Wentian couldn't help but feel a sense of joy in his heart. Bai Luyi must have been hiding her true side in front of them. Bringing him here was just a prank. You've got guts. Bai Luyi knew that Qin Wentian was doing this on purpose. Speak. What's your level of attainment in the Tao of Divine Inscriptions? Before I joined the White Deer Institute, I've always been a third-ranked divine inscriptionist. Qin Wentian didn't hide anything from Bai Luyi. Without sufficient strength, how would he be able to control the White Deer Institute? Then why did you purposely come here to learn? Bai Luyi glared at Qin Wentian. But my understanding of divine inscriptions is extremely limited. For example, the forging of weapons, inscribing formations, combat techniques, as well as the creation of puppets, I'm completely clueless about them. Before this, I could only inscribe third-ranked divine inscriptions to aid in the forging of third-ranked divine weapons, Qin Wentian explained. Do you have any samples of the divine inscriptions you inscribed? Bai Luyi asked. Qin Wentian nodded his head as he caressed the interspatial ring on his finger. A moment later, a painting appeared in Qin Wentian's hands as he passed it over to Bai Luyi. An innate technique hidden within the divine inscriptions. Bai Luyi could discern the profundity of the painting with a single glance. She stared at Qin Wentian in astonishment. This fellow's level of attainment in the Tao of Divine Inscriptions was actually so high. Have you really never studied it before? You're just trying to figure it out yourself? Bai Luyi was extremely curious about Qin Wentian. I have a forging-type astral soul, and was born with the aptitude for inscribing divine inscriptions. If Qin Wentian were to tell Leng Ning these words, she would definitely say that he was boasting. However, Bai Luyi didn't doubt his words. Her beautiful eyes couldn't help but shine with a brilliant light as she stared at Qin Wentian. Evidently, she had dropped her facade. Seems like you're a genius in the Tao of Divine Inscriptions. In that case, do you have any questions for me? Bai Luyi asked. Didn't you say you wanted me to continue studying the Tao of Divine Inscriptions with you? Qin Wentian laughed as he looked at Bai Luyi, causing her to stare at him. You sure are narcissistic. If it's not me, could it be Yin Kong? Qin Wentian shrugged as he continued. Actually, even if you didn't do this, I would still think of a way to continue studying the Tao of Divine Inscriptions with you. After all, there are many things that I don't understand. Although I've benefited greatly from this 1 month, I still feel that I'm still lacking. Hence, the reason why I'm treating you to a meal is because I want to get closer to you. Bai Luyi stared at Qin Wentian in astonishment. She only saw that Qin Wentian's eyes were clear and pure, and he had a simple smile on his face. It was very sincere, completely different from the gazes of many men when they looked at her. Not only that, he didn't hide his intentions at all, causing her to feel a sense of intrigue. You won't have improper thoughts about me, right? Bai Luyi suddenly asked. Cough cough. Qin Wentian coughed, almost choking on his wine. That simple and innocent face of hers was indeed extremely lethal. Qin Wentian didn't expect Bai Luyi to be so direct. He bitterly smiled. Miss Bai Luyi, I already have a woman that I love. Is that so? Bai Luyi was still skeptical. Is she beautiful? Yes, she's very beautiful. Qin Wentian nodded his head. How is she compared to me? Bai Luyi smiled as she looked at Qin Wentian, causing Qin Wentian to see her in a new light. She should be more beautiful than you. Qin Wentian seriously nodded his head, causing Bai Luyi's beautiful eyes to freeze for a moment before she smiled. In that case, I'd like to meet her in the future. Does that mean you believe me? Qin Wentian also relaxed. For the time being, I'll believe you. However, if I discover that you're lying to me, you better be careful. Bai Luyi flashed a threatening expression, causing Qin Wentian to shiver involuntarily. According to Leng Ning, this Bai Luyi was extremely powerful, and was even proficient in the Tao of puppets. Every time someone dared to disrespect her, they would be taught a terrible lesson. After that, the two of them chatted about some topics related to divine inscriptions. Qin Wentian was extremely satisfied with this meeting. In the future, he would be able to study divine inscriptions together with Bai Lui, which meant that he would have one foot in the White Deer Institute. His first step in taking over the White Deer Institute. After returning to the Lung clan, Lung Ning kept staring at Qin Wentian, her beautiful eyes flickering. "What are you looking at?" Qin Wentian perspired. "What did you talk about with Bai Lui?" Lung Ning asked curiously. "Nothing much, I just wanted to get closer to her. After all, I'll be studying divine inscriptions together with her in the future." Qin Wentian replied, his words causing Lung Ning's lips to twitch. "You're saying that Bai Lui will choose you to be with her?" "MHM. Qin Wentian nodded. Lung Ning stretched out her hand, gently placing it on Qin Wentian's forehead. Over the past month, the two of them had grown closer and treated each other as friends. Hence, Lung Ning was much more casual with her actions. "What are you doing?" Qin Wentian's face was filled with black lines when he saw Lung Ning placing her hand on his forehead. "I'm checking to see if your brain is damaged." Lung Ning retracted her hand, speechless. "But your luck is really good. To think that Bai Lui would agree to eat with you. How strange." After which, Lung Ning shook her head and returned to her room. No matter how much she thought about it, she couldn't understand what was going on. However, the events of the second day caused Lung Ning to be taken aback. After Lung Ning and the rest gathered at the academy, they proceeded towards the Hell Arena. Bai Lui walked in front alone, and no one dared to approach her. Qin Wentian was the only one who was more daring, walking shoulder to shoulder with Bai Lui. The two of them chatted happily, as though they were very relaxed. Upon seeing this, Lung Ning was dumbfounded. Could it be that Bai Lui, this pure and innocent teacher, had been duped by the boastful Qin Wentian? Yan Kong narrowed his eyes, his gaze akin to that of a venomous snake, as he stared fixedly at Qin Wentian's back. Only Fatty Fan Li's worship of Qin Wentian had reached a point where he could prostrate himself before him. Not only did he easily get closer to Lung Ning, he was even so close to the ice beauty Bai Lui. How could he not be inferior to Qin Wentian? As he thought of this, Fatty Fan Li even narcissistically touched his own face. At this moment, many in the crowd were thinking that Bai Lui was only 18 this year, in the prime of her youth. Could it be that she had fallen in love with Qin Wentian? If that was the case, didn't that mean that the slot to cultivate together with her was? As they thought of this, many people cast sympathetic glances at Yan Kong. Yan Kong also had the same conjecture. His gaze grew colder and colder as he stared at Qin Wentian. Since this was the case, he could only say that Qin Wentian was courting death. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.